Yet another episode of WhickTV. It's a cross ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political, cultural, and silly serious. Today, we're having a conversation on progressivism and what role progressives and progressivism plays within the Democratic Party. Sid, my buddy here, asked me to set up a conversation between him and Destiny, and that's what I've done. I'm going to be, I guess, micro-looting this conversation a little bit. I'll step in when I want and ask questions as I feel uh, is interesting to progress things, but I'm going to give the mic to Sid, let him start, and give his little pitch here. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I mean, do you mind if I give a quick introduction about myself? Like,
Of course, tell people who you are.
yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, my name is Sid. I go by Lil Baby Gandhi on Twitter. I'm a social democrat or a democratic socialist, if you want. I place a big emphasis on the democratic part of that word, which means that I truly do believe in the values of liberalism, which includes things like maximizing freedom, equal opportunity, democracy, and the protection of individual rights. I just believe that maybe a more just distribution of capital income or goods and services better serves the goals of liberalism. And I think for Destiny, this would mean that I kind of fit in the vein of some people he's had a conversation with, people like Matt Brunig, who I think he probably believes that belong in that sort of democratic coalition. In practice, this means that I am entirely against authoritarianism. So, states like China or Cuba or the USSR, I do no apologetics for. I support a sort of post World War II consensus of Swedish Democrats or Nordic Democrats or Nordic Social Democrats that helped build a lasting welfare state through a democratic process. So that's just a quick spiel on me, just to get it out of the way. That's all I have.
Hey, well, what did you come here to talk about?
To talk about progressivism, I think following Destiny over the last couple of months, I think I agree with a lot of what he says about the fact that the airwaves on the left have been overtaken by voices like Hassan, who are really populist, who are really anti-liberal. And what I wanted to have a conversation was how do you see an opportunity to bring these people back into a kind of democratic coalition? What do you see as the problem with progressivism? And I tried to do some research this week on Destiny's thought process. I've just been really busy with work, but if what the conception seems to me is that progressivism can be a descriptor of basically kind of socially liberal values. So things like adherence to LGBTQ rights or the Black Lives Matter movement or whatever, and they can fall into a liberal capitalist kind of bucket, or they can fall into a leftist bucket, basically. And I just wanted to know, does he think that a portion of these people can be brought into that democratic fold, into that coalition, or do you think that it's lost beyond all kind of meaning? So, and I think if that's an okay point to start the conversation.
Okay.
Well, what do you think?
I guess there's a lot of distinctions that I would draw right off the bat. I think the first thing I would kind of ask is, what do you mean? So here's two questions. I said the first thing is what do you mean when you say progressive? And would you consider somebody like Hassan to be progressive?
No, absolutely not. I think I listened to a short video that you did. It was like a clip. Basically, you talked about the fact that progressives fit into maybe like a social liberal kind of umbrella, and they can fall into like a liberal side or it can fall into a leftist side. I feel like I would put people like Hassan into a more like leftist progressive kind of viewpoint, but they don't agree with liberal values at all. They have no respect for liberal democracy. They don't believe in liberal values whatsoever. But I think maybe there's a sliver, maybe there's like a portion of people who fall into that thing that can be captured by a kind of a liberal progressive camp, maybe.
Okay, because one thing that's kind of been confusing that's happened over the past few years is, am I able to ask real quick, how old you are? Are you from the U.S.?
I'm 28. I'm from Canada.
Okay. So over the past, I'm sure you guys, even being in Canada, you get a lot of U.S. media. over the past like few decades, the Republican Party and Republicans in the United States have been calling every single Democrat a socialist communist, like over and over and over again. So people's perceptions or ideas of what that even means is insanely skewed. And you had kind of this more progressive wing of the Democratic Party. I would say that progressivism in the United States was usually like, it kind of came from this culture of, well, I'll say like, derisively, it was called like social justice warriors, and then it kind of became woke people. But it was basically people that had, like, I would say like identity politics was like a focal point of a lot of what they talked about. I don't necessarily mean that in a negative way, but kind of more intersectional ways of viewing society. So just because you are rich, or just because you're poor, or just because you're from here or here, like it could be that you being black could have a hugely impactful way of how society treats you and how you navigate society, or you being gay, or you being an immigrant, or a multitude of other things that could influence you. And then progressives were kind of like hyper attuned to, or aware of, or advocated on behalf of those types of things. I would say this had basically nothing to do with Marxism or communism or whatever else, despite Jordan Peterson running around a million times saying that this was postmodern, neo-Marxist, whatever weird, verbal garbage.
Well, he's probably dead now, right now, so we're good. Yeah,
probably. Yeah, or he's in the milking chamber, whatever's going on with him.
Inshallah. Yeah.
But the something weird started to happen maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where you started to get, maybe it was kind of off the back of the Bernie Sanders stuff, where you started to get like a genuine socialist current of people that weaponized, or not weaponized, but they hid under like the progressive umbrella. Hassan still does this every now and then, but they actually were like Marxists, meaning they were chiefly concerned with class-related issues and the complete and total disassembly of like capitalism or any kind of like capitalist system. And it was easy for them to kind of masquerade as progressives for a while, because there would be some like abstract policy overlap, like Medicare for all, or attacking billionaires or whatever, this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, these people have a huge disdain for identity politics. It'll come out when Hassan is fighting with another trans person or another black person in his audience, where he'll start screaming about how black struggle isn't real, it's all just class stuff, or identity politics is cringe, like Republicans and Democrats just use this to distract you from class issues. They talk about like rainbow capitalism was a big talking point for a few months, where it's like, oh my God, like all the social progress we've made was just corporations trying to distract us from class issues. And these people are a problem. They're fundamentally not in like the liberal movement. I wouldn't say that like they should be banned from the US, or we should ban that political party, but they're not Democrats, they're not liberals, and I think it's important to recognize that and not allow them to masquerade as such. And then that's the big distinction I draw between like progressives and kind of like socialists, Marxists, whatever they call themselves. Obviously in the US and in Canada, we use all of these words interchangeably. In the US, liberal means Democrat, and a lot of people think Democrats are socialists, and a lot of people think socialism is like just Sweden, and there's a whole clusterfuck behind that. The second thing I would say is I draw a big distinction between like the content creators and the media people versus like the audience. So whereas I would consider like Hassan to be a hardcore like Marxist-Leninist, I don't think the majority of Hassan's audience are like card-carrying Maoists, ML types who are ready to violently overthrow the United States. I'm sure a lot of these people are progressive or just like very far left or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's a broad thing. Yeah.
No, I totally agree with you. I think these people, at least under that fall under the branch of the kind of Hassan umbrella, they have a total disdain for any liberal values. So none of it is driven by, kind of respect for democracy, or respect for liberal rights or whatever. But it feels like the entire movement has been co-opted by their voice, and it's been the loudest. And I think what's been really sad for me to see, especially, is that even the sort of center left liberal institutions kind of becoming mouthpieces for that. And I've seen you tweeting about it, but it was people like Ezra Klein and Pod Save America sort of carrying water for Hassan. So in your opinion, like what is the best way to kind of counteract these people? Because one of the things that Ezra Klein said that I sort of marginally agree with is that sort of excising them and totally removing them is not a surefire strategy, because he drew parallels to people like Tucker Carlson or Nick Fuentes, who were deplatformed off everything, but they seem to have gotten big enough now that they're able to like create a schism within the Republican Party itself. Like, what do you think is the best way to deal with this sort of rhetoric without totally removing them from you have to know eye of the media, basically?
I think it's always good to know where stuff is coming from. Like, I think it behooves you to understand why a movement is getting popular, and so you have to pay attention to where the political winds are blowing. But I think that the issue is that there's I talk about this so much on stream, but there's like this media environment that MAGA have figured out for how to accelerate bullshit talking points into like the social media feeds. And the leftists have also figured out the same formula, and the center left hasn't at all. So the issue you run into is the center left is like slamming its head into the wall over and over again, trying to figure out like how to get its messaging right or how to deal with more radical figures in its party while also fighting off the Trumples. And they're really, really far downstream trying to figure out like, do we need a Joe Rogan, or do we need like more populist talking points, or are we not picking the right candidates, when they don't realize that there is this kind of like media bad idea acceleration chamber where the far left has this and the MAGA movement has this, where you can create any talking point you want and then refine it, hone it in your little media environment, and then shoot it out onto social media and have everybody believe it who's part of that camp. And then this is what you're fighting over. So my complaint for like probably the past year at least has been that the left needs to the center left, the Democrats need to figure out how to do messaging online or how to make the other type of messaging illegal, because until that's done, there's like nothing. I mean, like I can give like broad things, but they're just not going to be like I would say broadly. Like I think people on the center left should challenge people on the far left more. But Ezra and these people, I don't think even really understand what it is they're dealing with or who they're talking to. They just don't know.
Can you point to anyone on the left or that's left adjacent that you say is doing it correctly? Anyone that you think is putting out media or engaging with the online information sphere in a way that is successful and something that you think we should emulate? Or
no, because unfortunately, it's just not possible for one person to do it. It's got to be a whole apparatus. So the thing that I've talked about a million times is that on the far right is all of MAGA. On the right and then on the far left, what you do is you have your people, your leaders, and they engineer talking points, and then those talking points are platformed ad nauseum on platforms that have no critical pushback. So it's always unfriendly platforms. This gains like enough power, enough momentum that when after they've done it back here for a little bit, and then they've like generated all this media and press around these ideas, that makes its way onto the social media platforms where everybody can kind of consume that thing and then have that idea, and that thing is like building towards some reality that they have, and then people will go forward with that message and carry it into the mainstream environments, assuming that it's like the truest thing in the universe. So to ground this out like in examples, on the far left side, the most obvious and extreme and crazy stupid example would be like Hassan's dog shocking thing. Right. So Hassan has been platformed in a friendly manner by a whole bunch of far left people that are all willing to play the same game, who are, like we're going to say it's fake. It's not real. It's a Mossad operation, I guess, or your dog is Mossad or whatever. All of this bullshit. And if enough of them feature him on shows where they all repeat that same talking point, well, that seems to be pretty true. He's not going to go on any shows where they're going to like have like a huge challenge to that. So then people that are kind of in this media atmosphere are just consuming this fact, and it must be true. There are so many different shows that are saying it, and then that's how that works. And then the same thing happens on the right, where every single time Trump goes onto any show, Fox News, Hannity, Fox and Friends, or whatever show he's on, it's always the same talking points, no critical pushback, and he says it in enough places, and then all of his media people carry it to all the same places that if you go into a social media feed, you're getting 100 different tweets about how, I guess that Charlottesville was solo funded by the Southern Poverty Law Center. That looks to be the case. But you think that because every single person in right-wing media are going on friendly platforms with no opposition and then stating this fact over and over and over and over and over again. And it gives us this air of credulity, or not credulity, it gives us this air of authority where you see it in so many places and it's so ubiquitous. Like there's no way every single person is lying about it, right? But yeah. But like, there's no way when you say like, how can somebody do this on the left? You can't. Like, it can't just be one person. There has to be like an agreement between all your political figures, all of your media figures, and then how you guys interact with each other in order to make it work.
No, I mean, I think everything that I see on these interviews is that I feel people feel so afraid to actually push back on Hassan's kind of most uncomfortable or kind of most disgusting viewpoints. Never really push back on it. They never ask him about his.
Real quick, do you think that's fear?
Sorry,
they're doing it because they're afraid. You mentioned the word afraid.
It's not fear. I mean, so look, I watched the Pod Save America interview with Jon Favreau and Hassan Piker. He was visibly uncomfortable. At least that was my perception of that interview. He was visibly uncomfortable the majority of that time. And I think he took a lot of what Hassan was saying at face value, and I don't ever really dug into some of the worst stuff that Hassan has said, whether it's like talking about the fall of the USSR was a catastrophe for the world, or Mao was a great man, or the Russian invasion of Ukraine was never supposed to happen, whatever. they just never dug into his most uncomfortable viewpoints. They never challenged it, I feel, on the interviews, because I feel like those things are so indefensible, but it just feels like it never happened. I don't know whether it's exactly fear, or what Destiny was saying earlier was that in the aftermath of the 2024 election, that the Democrats, the left, whatever, they were trying to find a figure like Joe Rogan for the left. I don't know if they've just kind of co-opted Hassan to be that person, but there's just not enough pushback on his viewpoints.
Yeah, but so what I'm saying is like that's by design. That's not by accident. That's just
You
how
think so?
1 trillion quadrillion %. Okay. Are you friends with? If I give you 2 pictures, can you post this to Gandhi? Wick?
Yeah, if you give me, I can share them on screen if you.
Well, I would prefer. Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. Okay, I can just DM it to him then.
No,
sure.
I'm just doing this so that you guys have like an idea of what I'm saying, and then you can both confirm it ideally without leaking. I mean, okay.
And you can just call me Sid, by the way.
Okay, Sid probably better than Gandhi. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So real quick, I sent you 2 messages.
I sent him. He has them.
Okay. So people might be able to guess, but I prefer.
Wait, sorry. What do I have them on?
You have them on Discord. Do you want me to send them to your Twitter instead?
Oh. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see him.
Okay.
You see him?
Yeah.
Good.
So,
Yeah.
If you want, you can take a second to read, or let me explain first. So, like, just so you understand, like, how the game works, right? So, I'm not going to name names. I mean, people will be able to guess whatever. But, like, this is a really large content creator, wants to set up a conversation. You can see in our first DM back and forth, right? You see this language of, like, I'm hoping to avoid kind of any, like, debate or gotcha stuff, right? Like, that's, like, a thing that they kind of want to avoid. You can see in the second one with his PR rep that it's also the same language, right? Like, this is more going to be an interview and not like a debate, right? You see this language in both these messages?
Yeah.
So like when I say that it's intentional, what I mean is like every single conversation. And one of the reasons why I talk to conservatives so much less than I did like a year and a half ago was because a year and a half ago, I was kind of willing to be like a little bit debatey, but like not super obstinate and not like, I'm going to make you squirm on these points. I'm going to kind of like play ball. And then conservatives made up a lot of excuses not to debate me later. Like, oh, he's mean about the Trump firefighter or whatever bullshit they said. But the reality was just that the confrontation was going to be a lot more critical. There was going to be a lot of squirming. And if you're going to do that style of debate, nobody wants to participate because it inhibits your ability to create that acceleration chamber where you can get all of these bullshit ideas to resonate with everybody else and then kind of like launch them out there into the media environment. Nobody wants to do those kinds of interviews. That's why when you see Trump go on any show, Trump's not being challenged. Trump's not being critically challenged on fucking Sean Hannity or Joe Rogan. And when you see Hassan go on, John Favreau or that crazy thing he did on the New York Times, right? These are insane statements, but are they insane? Like, there's a reason why we had studio audiences and sitcoms, and it's because when you hear people laugh, you think it's funny and you laugh along. And when you see somebody interviewing somebody and taking their ideas seriously and everybody else is, it seems like maybe they're serious ideas. And that's just kind of how people are programmed to think and respond in environments with audiences. So it is very intentional. Like, that's one example. I could give you a billion different examples of people that, like, high-level people that want to have interviews that, like, conduct themselves in exactly this manner, like ensuring that it's going to be a soft, like, environment before they even set foot inside.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, so you're basically saying that, like, they conditioned the environment to suit him, basically.
Yes.
Not bring up his worst successes or ever challenge him really on anything. I mean, I was really disappointed in the Pod Save America guys for doing that because they've been, I'm really, the work that they've done has been fantastic since, 2017. I've been listening to them from their first episode. They do
on the Pod Save America stuff, and I'm just curious, have you ever reached out to be on their show, Destiny? Have you ever tried to get in with the Pod Save America guys? I don't know the lore or anything.
I don't remember. I might, maybe a long time ago. I'm not sure. I don't remember. There was a time where I was reaching out to a ton of different people, almost like everybody, but some happened, some fell through. I don't remember explicitly for the Pod Save guys. But I don't think there's a world, I think with the style of interviews and everything they conduct, I don't think there's a world where they would ever have me on that show. I don't think.
That's unfortunate. Okay. That was my second question. Would you go on?
Would I? Yeah, of course I would. But I'm okay being confrontational. Like, I think if you're doing media, I think I think it's part of your responsibility to the audience and to what you do is you have to be confrontational, because if you're not confrontational, there was a quote, and I had this quote a long time ago. What was it? Like, if you're a journalist and you're not, if you're like interviewing somebody, they're not squirming, then you're just part of their like media press team or whatever, right? Like, So unless you're literally part of a person's team and you're doing free PR for them, why aren't you pressing them when you're interviewing them?
What's the balance for you on that? Like, is there, so would there be a level you'd be willing to tone it down? I know you did this in the past, but even now that you'd be willing to tone it down and say, okay, I won't talk about X or Y as long as we absolutely get to talk about Z, right? Is there like a level of compromise you'd be willing to engage in these things or what?
Yeah, of course. I'm sure there would be. But whatever that compromise is, it's way, 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 way away from where we're at right now.
Fair.
Like there are a million insane statements that just go completely and totally unchecked right now that are crazy to me. But again, it's by all of this is by design. It's not like random that this is happening. And you can watch how all these interviews play out and everything. Like it's very intentional. Yeah.
I mean, I guess one of the things that I guess I wanted to ask you based on that is, Pods in America is one of the biggest kind of liberal podcasts there is out there outside of like Midas Touch or whatever. And, these guys used to work for Obama, so they're, true and blood kind of liberals. Is it, do you ever feel uncomfortable? Do they keep bringing people like Hassan on with no pushback whatsoever? Like, do you feel like it reveals something about where the Democratic Party is in terms of messaging?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I don't think the Democratic Party has figured out that messaging style that I just spoke about. I don't think a lot of people understand how it works. So like when I talk about like the Joe Rogan stuff and people are looking for a Joe Rogan to the left, Joe Rogan was not created in a conservative laboratory. Joe Rogan was like a decently open-minded, normal person who started watching social media feeds and got brainwashed by conservative media. Like that was it. That's all that happened to him. It wasn't any crazy plot by conservatives. It was just them controlling so much of our media because they can hone and refine these messages, these single-purpose messages that are amplified and resonate with and echoed by every single person in their media sphere. Meanwhile, on the left, it's chaotic, which I think the chaos is generally a little bit better. You want like genuine discourse and everything, but given chaos on one side and uniformity of messaging on the other, the uniformity in messaging is always going to carry through louder and brainwash people more effectively.
And I guess even also the simplicity of it. Every right-wing kind of podcast has the same sort of brainwashed monocausal solution for everything, but when you come into, I guess, the left, if you want to have a more reasonable, truthful discussion of it, well, you have to say like, oh, well, that issue is not just, monocausal. There's this thing that contributes to it. But it makes for, I guess, much less interesting material for people to listen to. And I don't know if that, becomes secondary to the right-wing messaging, which is just total slop, right?
I think
it's just so brain dead. Yeah.
I don't think as much. I understand the temptation to think that. I used to think this a lot, but I think the right can sell complicated ideas. It's just the matter of having the uniformity in messaging. Like I say this a lot when I talk to like anti-vaxxers or COVID denialists, like these are not stupid people. Like I'll talk to some, or listen to some, somebody I'd be like, oh, this guy's a fucking retard. This guy's a dipshit. But like this guy is saying, we're on a regimen with 1,000 cc's of vitamin C. And then we're also trying like hydroxychloroquine and prophylactic ivermectin. It's like, doesn't sound like an idiot. They're just brainwashed. So I think the right can actually use complicated and sophisticated ideas to brainwash you with. Like their messaging doesn't always have to be simple. I think you kind of see that sometimes in the way they talk about like the tariffs are important for like 7 different reasons, and sometimes they're contradictory, or like why are we at war with Iran? Like they can change their reason on this. Like, yeah, I think that the left has to be careful not to fall into that trap of like just because our messaging is more complicated on some issues, that means that it's like impossible to catch up. I think you can. It's just having that uniformity of messaging. Yeah, it goes so far for everything that conservatives do.
It's across the board. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's not a simple thing, but yeah, I totally agree. I think it.
Or it's like it's simple, but it's not easy. One of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
What and this is to you, Sid, and maybe this will kind of get to a few things like, what role do you see normal progressives? What role should they play when it comes to the Democratic Party or working with liberals? Like, what, as a normal progressive, are you willing to, I guess, compromise with a liberal on? Or I guess, do you even see yourself as different from a liberal? I'm just really curious on that.
I see myself. I mean, I there's definitely points of contention that I see myself different from liberals on, but I am, I think, to separate the two questions, I think a lot of progressives do fall under that liberal umbrella. They don't need to be incentivized as much to vote for Democrats or whatever. They will do it anyway because they do believe in that kind of liberal conception of America. Me personally, I always, support liberal values. I support democracy. I support reformism. And I don't think that, I think that outside of the online space, there is less disagreement than we would believe, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. Do you think that the Democrats are doing enough to reach out to progressives? And what would you like to see them do better that they are failing at?
Honestly, this is where I'm going to take a sort of different position. I don't think the Democrats should have to do anything different. It should be so blatantly obvious to you that the Republican Party is such a force of evil in the world itself that you should just be voting Democrats. I don't know how much of that you can chalk up to Democratic messaging or doing enough for outreach, but I don't know how to incentivize progressive to look more into what Republicans are doing and how much they've damaged this world. I think one of the things that really troubled me is that I didn't see enough people in progressive spaces talking about the fact that Republicans cut USAID, which was dollar for dollar one of the most important programs that the world has ever had, resulting in the death of 1 million plus people in the world in this year and 14 million over the time span of the next 2 decades or whatsoever. I think that enough should be an incentive that you should just go vote blue no matter who. I don't know what exactly Democrats can do better in terms of messaging to reach out to these people. That makes sense.
Makes sense to me. What about you, Destiny? When it comes to Democrats and messaging, and I understand we live in this environment that you say that we are behind in a lot of ways, are there any improvements that Democrats can do right now, right? Are there anything other than set up a whole media apparatus that mimics the right-wing ecosystem? Is there anything like incrementally we can do in the meantime? I'm just really curious.
You can always advocate for better policies and everything. I think that's good, and make sure that you're, the basics, right? I just don't think the basics will go far enough at this point. I think we need to be a little bit more intentional with understanding how the media environment works and then what we have to do to be competitive in that media environment. In terms of progressives and liberals, or most progressives are liberals, I think, but in terms of further left people and center left people working together, I think the important thing to understand is that one is that we're all in the same camp compared to Republicans, that there's a huge difference and we're way more similar than we are different. I think that's really important. I think that's one of the big things that you see the leftists kind of go against, in that they talk about how the Democrats and the Republicans are more similar to each other than either party is to the leftists now. And then the second thing is that there is underlying all of our policy ideas that we're kind of aiming towards something similar. So personally, I think I'm a big markets guy. I think price controls are really dumb for most cases, unless you absolutely need them. So Mamdani was elected the mayor of New York City. I think he's probably further left policy-wise than what I'd want, but Mamdani over Eric Adams or any Republican, that's an easy choice. If I was in New York City, I would vote for Mamdani, 1 million times fraudulently. It's just the easiest choice in the world. And then when I see him do things like the grocery store price cap thing, when I look at that, my thought is not that Mamdani is trying to eradicate all business owners because he hates America and so he's doing price controls in stores. My thought is that he probably wants people to get food and this is how he thinks is the best way to do it. Either his idea is going to work, in which case I would adopt his idea because I think we have the same goals, or his idea fails and I would say, oh, well, look, there's another example of this type of approach to solving hunger doesn't seem to be effective. Let's do something else. I think that recognizing that you're kind of similar in cause there, and that the Republican Party is so far away from what progressives and liberals want to do, I think that's a really important starting point that we've kind of lost now with all the obsession on the far left about the two-party duopoly and everything else.
I guess how do we broadcast that message better? Because you see the Democrats that have come into power in states itself, you look at people like Abigail Spanberger or Mikey Sherrill. Spanberger, I think today I heard, they're putting forward a new, kind of child care or parental leave program that's going to go into effect in 2028. It's going to be one of the most generous out of all blue states. You look at Mamdani with his pied-à-terre tax, ostensibly very, very kind of progressive policies, but I don't feel like it gets broadcasted enough to people on the left or progressives to see that when Democrats get into power, they actually do some very important stuff. And I have a lot of these conversations with leftist progressives who think a lot about trans rights, and I tell them, well, look, almost all Democrat states outside of 3 or 4 have entrenched protections for trans people. Democrats do go out of the way to actually put good progressive policy forward, but it doesn't get broadcast well enough, I don't think, even though these are policies that people on the left or progressive would ostensibly agree with.
Yeah, I'm such a broken record on this. I'm sorry. I think for stuff like this, it just comes down to that messaging apparatus thing again. I know there are ways we try to brainstorm, like, well, how do you break through? But like when you have the messaging apparatus, you can literally rewrite reality. And you can see this come out in so many different ways. I remember watching Piers Morgan episode where Dave Smith was arguing. And there's a lot of conservatives where if you subtly introduce this into the conversation, they'll just agree with you, right? Like, I think if you just ask them off the top of their head, most conservatives will attribute the lockdowns across America to Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. I remember Dave Smith saying that 2020 under the Democrats was the worst year that we've ever had for media censorship. And everybody seems to not remember that Donald Trump was the president in the beginning of COVID. All the lockdowns happened under Donald Trump. Nobody seems to know this. And that's just been repeated ad nauseum so many times ad nauseum by the conservatives that like people just kind of like believe this and they just like move forward with it, even if it doesn't really fucking make any sense. Like when Biden is president, it's his FBI, it's his CIA. Everything that happens under them is horrible and evil and terrible. But like when you think about the FBI suppressing the laptop story and you think about the corrupt FBI that started January 6th against Trump, that was Trump's FBI. It was literally his director. He fired Comey. That was all his stuff. But Republicans are just so good at, if you create a message, you can make whatever the fuck you want and shoot it out to the American people. And because there's so much uniformity, you can get them to believe anything, right? Like Trump gets so much credit for freeing the hostages in Israel. Biden freed more hostages than Trump did. Like it's just nothing that you don't even have to be attached to reality. So to go back to that question, like how do you sell your policies to people? Mamdani is doing a really good job at trying to be strong on his messaging. Like I would say, like as good as you can be on your own, Mamdani is doing a phenomenal job, right? All the cute little Twitter videos, the walking around and filling up potholes, and the showing a person having simple policy messaging well. Like I think Mamdani's doing it about as well as anybody could ever be expected to. Yeah.
Do you think like Mamdani gives you a little bit more hope for progressivism because he ran as like an avowed democratic socialist or leftist progressive, but he's so willing to work with Kathy Hochul, who he has a lot of policy disagreements with, but they're able to work together and put forward policies that help both the state of New York and the city of New York, especially in terms of the way he was able to carve out this, tax on vacant apartments owned by, multimillionaires in New York City. That was, Kathy Hochul wasn't super against.
Yeah, my favorite thing about Mamdani...
Do you think he's able to play policy in that way?
My favorite thing about Mamdani is that he recognizes that like there are different Democrats that are appropriate for different places. So like Mamdani is not going to get elected, in a super moderate area or as the mayor of like a red city or something. There's three of them exist. Like he is the New York City mayor. It's a very blue place. He could be more blue than two senators in Georgia could be, Ossoff and Warnock, who are fighting for their lives in a very moderate, a red state, right? So, that's the thing I appreciate the most about Mamdani. I would hope that more progressives can recognize that. Like, I don't really have problems. Well, ideologically, I'm not that far left. But, if these people are getting local offices, if their policies are implemented and if they work, we have the same goals, right? If I'm wrong on it, then I don't care. I would just change my opinion immediately on it because it would be more directionally, trying to accomplish things I want to accomplish. I just hope that it's not like this idea of if our progressive didn't make it through the primaries, then fuck the Dems and AIPAC funded the opposition and now there's no way that anything good is going to happen in this country and I'm going to be totally disconnected from the political process and blah, blah, blah. Like that stuff is cancerous as fuck.
There has been some criticism of conversations such as these that we should not be focusing on Hassan or progressives or the left at anything, that we should give all of our attention to the right. Is there any there to any of these criticisms? Where should the Democrats and those who want to support them be focused right now, and why? And that's a question to both of you, so go ahead.
I would say real quick, I would say, no, bullshit. Like, Hassan spends all of his time fucking fighting Democrats. I think it's totally fine to aim a little bit more at him. I don't like this saying of, you can never punch left, because notice how the only people that say that are the people who are all the way on the left. That means they always have carte blanche to attack anybody they want. Hassan spent all of his time fighting Democrats and talking about how worthless they are, and those are his main opponents and enemies, and it's usually who he's campaigning against or whatever. That no, I think it's fair to point back at them and to try to establish.
Sure, is it fair? But is it effective? If we have Trump currently
we don't have any confusion right now. There's no confusion that Trump is evil. Everybody knows that on the Democratic side. They're doing what they can in terms of fighting against it. There's not much. We didn't give them the Congress or anything. So, they're doing what they can. But, there is a lot of confusion right now over I guess, do we support Mao and Stalin, like in the Democratic Party? And I think that's an issue that's worth sorting out.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
I mean, I feel like it's such a like a tiny sliver of the coalition, but I think Republicans are doing good enough, making well enough of a case of why you should vote Democrat right now. I think Trump's approval ratings are the worst that they've ever been. What I'd be interested in seeing is how this coalition like is borne out over the next couple election cycles. In terms of Hassani, I totally agree. He's always couching his criticism in terms of just hating Democrats in general and offering nothing in terms of getting people to vote for them. I think that makes sense.
I suppose. I guess there was a poll that came out, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, that showed that, and this is just one poll, so take it for what it's worth, right?
Yeah.
But it was about 42% of those polled thought the Democrats needed to move towards the center. And 24% thought they should move more left. About 18% thought they were just right. And the rest didn't know, right? Had no opinion. And this is to you, Sid, right? Like, so when you talk about progressives and progressivism, does part of you worry that by focusing on progressives and their role in the party, that you're kind of setting up Democrats to have a harder time electorally nationally? And why is that? Why looking at that poll, assuming it's true, right? How do you square these circles?
So it was 42% say the Democrats should move to the
needed to move
center.
towards the center. 24% thought they should move more left. 18% thought they were just right, and the rest were, I don't know, no opinion.
So yeah, you're basically saying focusing your efforts on that 24%, trying to cater to their policy goals is detrimental to the Democratic Party.
Plurality. What I'm saying is that a plurality say that the Democrats are too far left currently. They need to move more to the center. So when we try, when progressives are working in that environment, like, why should we prioritize progressive messaging or progressives at all in this environment?
I don't necessarily know what that means when 42% of people say that Democrats are too far to the left, because they control basically no levers of power. They're doing their best to effectively utilize what they have so far, which is they have no power in the Senate. They have a slim. They have a slim deficit in the House. So when people say like Democrats need to move more to the center, I mean, are we talking just in terms of messaging?
In terms of policy messaging, there's a whole host of issues.
I mean,
right? Like, we look at the top 5 issues from the 2024 election, and you saw like there's the economy, there's immigration, there's let me look at them.
There's the border. There's
abortion.
The borders.
Healthcare. Climate. All that.
Wait. Were Democrats polling negative on abortion? Is that?
Hold on. No.
I don't feel like that's true. No.
I'm saying the top 5 issues were economy, immigration, abortion, climate, healthcare, and by far the 2 biggest ones were economy and immigration. Right. 39% said economy. 20, and the next highest was 20% with immigration. Like, these are the top issues. How are progressives going to help Democrats win on those issues when, again, a plurality in the country show that they think that the policies the Democrats push are too far left right now?
I really don't have a good answer to that question, to be honest, because it's a muddle thing for me, because for me, Democrats don't control any levers of power whatsoever at all. So I don't know how that messaging squares up with what Democrats are doing, rather than what the conservative media or these podcast bros feed to them. I think in terms of progressives, I would say most of them generally fall into that Democrat camp, and they're willing to vote for Democrats. I don't know how much power we should spend on figuring out how to cater to them when they're generally willing to fall in line with Democrats itself. I don't know. It's like a muddled question. I don't have quite a clear answer, to be honest.
Any thoughts from Destiny's side of things?
I think that sometimes So I think there's two huge things going on. One is one of my big issues with progressives and socialists, but both groups kind of fall into this category of, or this camp of thinking that like everybody in America would agree with my policies if they just knew more about it. And so when people aren't agreeing with them, it's just because they haven't heard enough about them, when in reality, sometimes policies just aren't as popular as we would want them to be. So I think that's something that progressives need to contend with a lot. Sometimes this comes down to how unbelievably different the online world is to the, I don't want to say like the real world because it sounds derisive, especially given how much online stuff kind of controls for for politics now. But like the demographic of people that live in reality versus the demographic of people that spend a lot of time online are very different. And like there are three huge policy points that people online fight over that just have no motion in the real world. So and it sounds like, even saying this now, most audiences that listen to me will think I'm crazy. So one is most people live in an owned home. I think it's 70% of people live in an owned home. They don't care about rents. Like the rent complaint are usually for non-voters because they haven't been able to move to the area yet and vote, or it's for younger people who always complain about rent because they should, because you're young and life sucks. You've got student loan debt and everything else. But most people don't want to see the value of their homes decrease. So that rent talking point and bringing down rent necessarily brings you into conflict with your strongest voter base, which are homeowners that live in cities that are always voting because they're super tied down and invested in it, and they don't want to see rents decrease. They want the value of their property to increase. So like that's the talking point. A second thing is student loans. Most of your strongest voters don't care about student loans. They have them paid off. They're past that phase in their life. Usually these are younger kids that don't vote or don't vote as much. And it's just not a talking point that is going to get you very far with like winning elections. And then the third thing is Medicare for all. Most old people, believe it or not, the polling shows this time and time and time again, Kaiser Institute and other people have polled on this. Most people are happy with their healthcare, especially older people. Usually their concerns about healthcare aren't like Medicare for all. It's more like, how can I get prescriptions delivered to me directly? Or, if something changes, can I keep my doctor? Like these are the things that people are super obsessed with. So sometimes you have to make your talking points a little bit more translatable to like real life election results versus just kind of like riling up young people online. And then there's a second thing that plays in, and both of these are huge factors. The second thing is like when people say, I wish that Democrats would go back to the center and not go so far to the left. When somebody says that, I do wonder, what exactly are you talking about? Because if your idea is that Democrats are pro trans people eating your children, or Democrats like Biden and Kamala Harris were pro open the border and let in every single illegal immigrant, and you're like, I wish they would go to the center on that. Well, okay, but like your belief of what Democrats believe in isn't even what Democrats believe in. So your idea that they need to move to the center, you've just been listening to Republican caricatures of Democrats all day, so you don't even have a good handle on what the actual Democratic lawmakers are even saying. So I think those are two big factors at play.
Yeah, I think that the Hassan question, for lack of a better term, kind of plays into the second bit there because one of the things that I see is Fox News, the RNC, and many Republican leaders will point to Hassan and the crazy things he says. Like you guys all saw the article yesterday on micro looting. Okay, that is not something that's going to resonate with the voters, and it's something that people are going to look at and say, is this what Democrats believe? Is this what Democrats think, that it's okay to steal? And yeah, that's why I think that it's important to have these conversations to push back. But Sid, like, what can progressives do to push back against that kind of messaging? What do you think they should?
It's such a hard question, right? I mean, yeah,
I don't ask
I know what piece you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's why we're here, right? I mean, you look at, it's an op-ed piece in the NY Times about this very liberal, well-off lady that's talking about micro looting, and as Desi was saying earlier, there's a conservative apparatus that'll pick up on it and amplify it, and they can make the message, Democrat Party is a party of condoning loot or whatever, whereas Republicans can go on their own, little hog boxes, little echo chambers, and talk about the most heinous things, talk about ending a civilization in Iran and how that's a good thing, talk about cutting, millions off healthcare, whatever, and that's kind of accepted, but we have to answer to the most kind of lunatic part of the progressive movement, which is makes up a tiny sliver. It's just, again, it's about control of that media apparatus. It's about having the correct messaging to counteract that, because the inconsistency on how things get treated across in the different sides of the political spectrum is kind of astounding. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I think I always tell people to kind of like, not to make it all about me, but like just look at how people treat different people in the media to see what they actually think about them. So like when it comes to center left people, okay, like me, I get pretty hardcore targeted for deplatforming campaigns, right? So like on Twitch, obviously I'm, I guess, perma-banned because I'm a murderer slash rapist. I don't even know how. I'm like one of the only like perma-banned people on Twitch. Or for YouTube, I got hit with a big demonetization after the Charlie Kirk shooting. These are like big hits to my money. These are big hits to my reach. It's a pretty severe attack, I would say, on the things that I do. Most of my time, believe it or not, is spent like hardcore fighting with the right. I hate the right. As of recently, it's been a lot of this like very far left stuff with Hassan, but I consider the right to be huge adversaries of mine, and you know, I do what I can to fight against that. But people like Hassan or people who are on the far left, these people. Oh, and then another example would be like Jimmy Kimmel, right? This is like a center. Jimmy Kimmel's not a fucking socialist or a Marxist or whatever else, but you know, Donald Trump is obsessed with attacking these people on social media and trying to get their news networks to get rid of their shows. You know, he was celebrating Stephen Colbert having his contract announced like 9 months ahead of time that it's not going to be renewed, and he was celebrating Kimmel going for a while. That, you know, the FCC guy was bragging about talking to Trump about it. Like, these are the types of people that people on the right attack. And I think that says something. When they look at people like Hassan is never deplatformed from anything. I don't know if any of these far left socialists ever really get deplatformed from anything ever, but it's because the Republicans like them there because they're such a great vector to attack the Democratic Party through. And I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, and I've told people to pay attention to this, and I encourage everybody to pay attention to this. All of the, what we would say are horrible, disgusting, whatever things Hassan is saying, watch how the Republicans treat him. And so far, this has been entirely true. Nobody on the right is calling for Hassan to be deplatformed. Nobody is saying he needs to be banned from Twitch. Nobody's saying the New York Times needs to shut down. What they're saying is, wow, look at Hassan. That's all Democrats. He represents every single person of the Democratic Party. And they use him as an attack vector over and over and over again. None of his platforms are ever under threat. He hasn't been banned from fucking anything ever, really. He's not demonetized anywhere. And I think there's a reason for this. He spends most of his time attacking other people on the left. He's not really a threat to Republicans, and they realize it. He's just a convenient scapegoat to attack other Democrats with. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the right's not held up to the same standard, right? I mean, you know, remember when Rob Reiner died, Trump got to go on his Truth Social and just cheer it on, and yet nobody on the right has kind of held to account for that.
Well, kind of. It's important to know there are no standards on these media things.
Absolutely,
it doesn't matter. Like even on the far left, I mean, like how many times do these people virtue signal like we can't support Ukraine because of Azov? Meanwhile, Platner and the Nazi tattoos are actually A-OK for here are the reasons why. Or like, well, you know, billionaires are the most evil people in the universe, but Steyer in California, you know, that guy's actually kind of cool. As long as you're on the same team, you get a pass on everything. And it's the same on the right, of course, as well. We're the party of Christian values, but also Andrew Tate, the rapist, and Donald Trump, the rapist, are like our best friends. Like, there are no standards. It's just a matter of like
they get a pass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all virtue signal. I mean, especially the Ukraine, the wedge issue with the Azov battalion, which was like 400 people like a fucking decade ago or something. Which, by the way, Nazis are something that, you know, portions of the far left are ambivalent about or warm about. You know,
Sure.
there's no inherent hatred of Nazism with them. At least, I mean, when I look at the really, really far left, I don't want to speak for the majority of it, but they don't really have a problem with that. It's just a wedge issue. It's a virtue signal to discount their culpability in supporting, you know, Russia or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm worried that all this, like we talk about all these things, right? We go about all these issues and how progressivism and liberalism can kind of work together, and what we need to do as Democrats. For a large portion, at least, of the people who are in charge of the media apparatus, such as it exists, at least on the left, I'm talking the podcaster class here, doesn't matter because Israel-Palestine is the only thing we can talk about. Any conversation we have to have, that's all we're going to be talking about, right? And that's it. And if you're on one side of that, then you're verboten. And if you're on the other side of that, you better make sure you're as extreme as you can on that side, or again, they'll just say you're a Mossad op. And so I don't know how to get over that. Frankly, any ideas?
I mean, just to point is that I don't really think people like this care about the Israel-Palestine issue either. You know, I hate to go back to Hassan. I really detest talking about the guy, and hopefully it's the last time I have to talk about him. But the fact that they can't even bring themselves to admit that, okay, maybe Democrats would have had a better policy on Israel, maybe not a perfect policy like the way that, you know, he would want or whatever, but the total inability to admit that, yeah, you know, Kamala Harris probably would have done a better job with what's going on with the conflict in Israel and Palestine. Maybe there would be a more lasting ceasefire. Maybe she would bend less to the whims of Netanyahu. Maybe she wouldn't go into war in Iran. there's just no ability to admit that. They just never say it. They always say, "Oh, it would have been the exact same." "Oh, you're a fucking idiot. You think it would have been different? Democrats, Republicans, same thing. Ha ha ha. Democrats would have done the same thing." It's really infuriating. So I don't even know how to start a conversation with them about it, because they don't really genuinely value the fate of Palestine at all. I don't think. At least it's been my experience with the conversations with them.
Here, I'll say this, man. Let me just ask you this, Sid. Okay, and maybe this'll spark some conversation here. What criticisms would you have for Destiny? He's here. I mean, you've seen him on Twitter. You've seen him interact on various shows. How has he failed? And in what
we're
ways,
supposed to fight
in
each
your
other,
opinion?
Wick? Is that what you want? Is that what you're looking
I
for? Blood
just,
sports?
I
Are
just
we
look.
are we getting into a cafe?
We're all just being like, "Oh, we agree so much. Oh, I agree more.
Sure.
No, I agree more."
Well, what
And
is this?
that's
Is this supposed to be a
fine.
debate conversation? What was this supposed to
No,
be?
it's a conversation. It's a
Oh.
conversation.
Okay.
But when we talk about like,
I'm having a good time so far.
I'm having a good time too. But look,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
You can always go to the comment
nothing,
section
that's
too. Bring
fair.
in people. I'm sure people disagree. If that's what you want. But.
Yeah.
So what was you want me
Yeah,
to?
I just want you to
tell you
like.
what.
Do you have any criticisms for either Destiny? It doesn't have to be Destiny. It could be the Democrats in general, right? Center left people. I don't know.
I'm not gonna. I never go on to criticize Democrats. I want to always display unity when I talk about Democrats, especially in a time like this. I'd like them to be in power for me able to criticize them. I understand that what matters most is getting Republicans out of all levers of power and fundamentally reforming the Republican Party. I think, in terms of criticism, what I would have of Destiny is that I know he's made some very controversial statements in the past, maybe that I'm not fully enlightened about, but I was wondering how that translates into making a footprint in the real world, because I know that I've talked to, I don't know if she's your co-host or your friend, Not So Erudite, or Kyla or whatever, and Z before, and I know that you try to make an imprint in IRL politics by going around debating people on college campuses, but do you feel like some of the controversial stuff that you've said in your past kind of impedes your ability to be politically effective for the Democrat Party? I don't know if that's as much criticism as it is a question.
Yeah, probably. I think that if I would have known that I wanted to do like politics just full time, I probably would have navigated different things a little differently in the past, like stuff like the Kyle Rittenhouse stuff, maybe possibly.
Yeah, that was my next question. Like, what are like 2 or 3 things that you would not have said, considering the position where you are now, where you want to be actively involved in politics?
I mean, it would generally
in real
be
life,
commentary
in the
on huge on like very big events that I know where that commentary is going to carry pretty far. So obviously, the Rittenhouse stuff, there are certain statements I made that I probably could have toned down a bit. Obviously the protesters one. The problem is trying to figure out like which statement is going to get clipped or carried. And Hassan will say things like out of context all the time, but it's not actually out of context. I feel like for most of my like the worst stuff that I get quoted on, I feel like it's generally out of context. So like people quote that Rittenhouse one saying that I want like protesters to get killed or whatever. But like if you listen to like 2 minutes or whatever of the statement, what I'm saying is that I think that people have a right to defend their property. And at this point, like because the rioting shit was the only thing that was hurting Democratic chances for winning elections, because the shit on fire was terrible. So if people want to go and fucking shoot protesters because they're blowing all their gas stations up or whatever, then fuck it, they could do it. Which is definitely an extreme statement. I don't think I would make a statement like that today, because it was obviously, that's really fiery. Holy shit. Hello?
That keeps happening.
Oh.
What is it?
I don't know, some base explosion. There's that, and then I think like the general like drama-y content I did, I think there's probably a lot of like carryover from that in terms of like I have a certain type of like negative anti-fan audience that follows me around because of the type of audience that type of content tends to attract. But it wasn't until late 2023 that I took a more like intentional turn towards just doing political stuff. That being said, like I'm pretty aware of like any baggage I have. Like I'm not generally demanding that candidates have to appear next to me, or they need to platform me, or they need to bend to my whim or will. I usually just try to help where I can, but
I guess another question, and this is the last time I'm going to talk about it as well. I mean, you're probably a big, proponent of like the David Shore kind of popularism
sure.
approach to politics. Like, do you feel like you would temper your messaging. And I don't exactly know your messaging on Israel itself, but like you see the favorability of Israel itself in the Democratic Party. And I'm not saying this is the main issue. That's not my point here. But do you think you would have tempered what you said about Israel? Because I know that you get a lot of controversy in what you said about Israel. I'm not fully informed of what you said about Israel, but do you think you would temper it since it's so unfavorable within the Democratic Party right now?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I guess it would depend on the particular statements, and it would depend on my engagement with like where I'm at. But one thing that I say a lot is that I think different people can do different things. So like I'm ever running for office. So because I'm not running for office, there's going to be a different standard on what I can say. And I apply this evenly. Like Hassan can make much edgier statements. Like he's not running for office. Like I acknowledge that, and I wouldn't expect like a streamer to hold themselves to the same type of media trained standard that people running for elected office would hold themselves to. For Israel stuff in particular, I don't know. It would depend. I feel like most of the stuff that like blew up about me, for Israel, like the two biggest clips that get used against me, I'm going to pull the out of context thing again, but I can always explain the context. The first one, I guess, is like kind of a dumb statement. Maybe I shouldn't have said, but there was that one where I'm talking to Wes and somebody else, and they ask me like out of nowhere, they're like, "What's your opinion on Israel-Palestine?" And I think my response is like, I feel like these two people are going to fight forever, and I think I probably prefer Israel, so I guess they should just genocide all the Palestinians and be done with it. The people present this clip as though I made this statement like months after October 7th, but this was like several months prior, so nobody was really talking about Israel-Palestine. There's just like a random comment I made. This was not like my fully informed take on the conflict or whatever, but obviously that gets played a lot. I guess I could have just not said anything, but I never know like when someone's going to do a major terrorist attack and blow shit up. And then there was also like, I did like a 3-hour fan meetup in Israel. And one of the themes of my trip was talking a lot about like what can Israel do to improve its messaging to the rest of the world, because they fucking suck at communicating anything they want to anybody, and they're losing the PR war. This is like a year and a half ago, and now they've completely fucking lost it. And I think one of the things I said was there was like a lot of stories blowing up about IDF soldiers would go into homes and they would put on fucking dresses and drawers and shit, and then they would take pictures of it. I'm like, this is the most retarded fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And my comment was like, if you're gonna go into fucking homes and put dresses on, why the fuck are you taking pictures of this and posting it on social media? This is so stupid. Now, I think a fair reading of me saying this in the context of a 3-hour talk with my face, I'm like, it's like half joking. Like, obviously, you just shouldn't do that at all. But this clip gets taken as like, I think people legitimately believe that I was visiting IDF soldiers to coach them on how to hide war crimes. Like, that's a crazy take. So I don't know. But also, like, I feel like a lot of the things that I say that get clipped, this is going to be really boring, but I'm going to go back to the whole, it comes down to how much you control the media environment, because Hassan can literally electrocute his fucking dog to death in the background, and everybody on his side will just deny that it ever even fucking happened, or make the craziest, most unhinged comments about things that aren't even like out of context. It just represents his ideology, but like people on his side will defend it. So yeah, I think if I had like a coalition of people who were willing to sweep as hard as Hassan sweepers or Trump sweepers, that it wouldn't actually matter as much. But yeah.
What we need is cults. We need to be cult leaders, is what I'm hearing. Okay.
Unfortunately, that it's working right now.
I agree. I mean, you should have blind devotion to the Democrats right now. I think that's all that really matters. Until the Republicans are out of power, and you can have that inter-party discussion. Right now, all that matters is getting Democrats in power.
Hold on. Do you worry that that's going to lead to an inability to address reality in a real way later on down the road?
No.
Once we've beaten MAGA, once we've cleared them out, right? Once they've the Trump family's in jail, all the wildest liberal dreams that you could think of, right? And then we're sitting in a place where we've built this monster, right, to defeat the enemy, this monster of cultish devotion, of just ad nauseum repeating messages, whether they're true or not. How do we ensure that doesn't just come back to bite us? What kind of fail safes can we put in to whatever we build that will prevent it from just becoming populist forever, if that makes sense?
I just genuinely believe in the kind of intellectual honesty of the Democratic voter base. I think I have a kind of psychopathic and unrelenting hatred of Republicans. I truly believe they are, genuinely slavish people devoted to a fucking cult leader. I've never seen the same sensibility in Democrats. So it's not something that I'm super worried about. And especially, going back to Joe Biden's debate performance, for example, what you saw in the aftermath was like Democrats basically saying together, like, okay, this guy's not fit to run for election. You saw the apparatus in power, people like Nancy Pelosi figuring out how to stop this guy from running, or put in efforts towards maybe having a kind of like a mini primary or putting Kamala Harris in place or whatever. You saw a party that was willing to actually internally critique itself, to react on the feet of kind of seeing the person in power not be who they were meant to be in the presidential election. You saw that kind of self-reflection that I've never, ever, ever, ever seen in Republicans since 2016. I've never really wondered about that, because I just, Democrats are just not retarded. They're generally well-adjusted people. They have, they can self-reflect and, move forward with that. So I've generally just never wondered that.
I kind of worry about it. I think there's a world where if we give into that messaging too much, we do lose that part of the democratic apparatus. But then like the ability for us to be self-critical. But like this is a hot take, but like, could it have been that after Biden's debate performance, if Democrats instead ran nonstop coverage of how horrible Donald Trump's debate performance had been, because it was bad. Nobody remembers any of his answers, but they were all abysmal, and had focused instead on Biden had been traveling so much and doing so much stuff that, that he had a bad performance or whatever else. Like if Democrats would have focused on that, there's a world where Biden just wins the election again. And I know that from the Democratic side, that just sounds impossible, but like, think about all of the insane health things that Trump has just gotten completely unscathed by, right? We had these weirdo fucking bruises on his hand for like a month or two, with Caroline Leavitt like very clearly fucking lying about it. Oh, he shook so many hands, ha 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 ha. We had him like he disappeared from all media for like a week. I still don't think we have any fucking idea where that came from. We got a photo where his ankles were like 3 times the size that they're supposed to be, and then we found out he's got some chronic venous whatever insufficiency problem that, well, I thought he was the perfect picture of health. We had his physical doctor guy who said this guy's 200 pounds, perfect health except for the scar on his ear that nobody can fucking see from the assassination attempt. It's thing after thing after thing after thing, and none of it sticks to him because none of them pay attention to it. Meanwhile, when Biden had that bad debate performance, every single motherfucker on the left was like, holy shit, we got to get rid of this guy, we got to do something about it. Like, maybe if we would have been as sycophantic as the Republicans on Biden, maybe Biden would have just won an easy re-election because he beat Trump the first time with the most votes in all of U.S. history, and that would have just been it. Who knows?
Are you saying we're not sycophantic enough? What was the...
For the current media environment, yes, which is bad. I don't like that, but if it's one side of self-critical people against a bunch of sycophants, I think in a way the sycophants have a huge advantage there. They're always going to win, which is why I'm saying we have to be sycophantic to counter it. That's what I mean when I'm talking about this media narrative thing. But I'm saying that we need to find a way to disassemble the media apparatuses that make this type of algorithmically propagated news stuff so powerful, because it's corrosive. It's mind rotting. It's horrible. We can't survive it.
How do you do that with still allowing freedom of speech and the ability for people to go out and to say what they will and what they have? I think one thing I think I've heard you suggest, maybe it wasn't you, maybe I'm hallucinating, but requiring people who receive foreign funding to disclose that, right? I think that is a huge thing. That would be a huge help. But what other, I struggle with this because I understand the problem. I recognize the issue. The proposed solutions about just go towards censorship in a way that I think is going to do even more harm than the problem that we have. So I'm just curious, how do we fix that from that perspective? So if we don't want to go the route of building that apparatus, how do we dismantle what's currently here without impacting people's freedoms?
I think no Section 230 protections for any platform that uses algorithmically generated content. So if you're using an algorithm to sort through people's media feeds, and you're organizing what they're going to see, no Section 230 protections for you. Boom! I don't know where I just heard that. I heard this idea 2 days ago, and I like it.
Interesting. Okay.
What is Section 230? Sorry, I've never heard of that. What's the idea?
If the New York Times publishes an article about me that's defamatory, I think I can sue the New York Times because they published the piece. Social media companies are protected from that kind of liability by a safe harbor principle that was created by Section 230, which basically says if it's user-generated content, you can't hold the platform responsible for it. So if you defame me on Twitter, I have to sue you. I can't sue Twitter for hosting your user-generated content. This is considered Section 230 protection. I think that platforms that deal in news or that arrange your timeline based on an algorithm, so they decide what you're going to see and what you're not going to see, I don't think they should have protections that prevent them from getting sued for misinformation or whatever else. I think it's the algorithmically generated thing is what is destroying our brains. Like, people live in totally different realities because once you start consuming a little bit of media, you just get force-fed headline after headline after headline of stuff that completely agrees with whatever you think already. It's not good.
Which is just not based in reality at all, right? Yeah, totally agree. And as for, like, I mean, how do we engender that type of sycophancy in the Democratic Party? I think it's really difficult. I mean, as a voter base, Democrats are generally more well-educated. They're generally more upwardly mobile. They're generally higher on the income distribution. And it's harder to convince that group of people to blindly support the Democratic Party.
Well, I think in general, like, if you got rid of this like media thing, then I don't think you would have to worry about, you wouldn't need to create the sycophancy because those types of alternate realities couldn't be created anymore.
Yeah, it just, the reason I ask is because the idea of becoming sycophants just disgusts me as a person. Like, it's like me seeing a cockroach. I instinctively shy away from that. I don't like it as a concept, and I don't want to be that. And I don't want. I hope that you are wrong. That's what we have to do to win. I hope there are other ways to compete.
Well, I guess the question would be: can you think of a single thing that's broken through that my little bullshit model of how media works right now can't explain? Like, is there a single thing that is contradictory to that? I'd love to be incorrect on that, but I can't. I feel like it perfectly explains like every aspect of our media environment.
I think the ICE stuff might be a good counterexample, because despite many on the right trying to spin that, they had all the kind of same messaging, right? We had the videos of what happened, and everyone saw that they were fucking lying, right? They weren't being honest with any of this, and that really cut through. I don't know how we replicate that though, right? So
the thing that I'm gonna say is, and this might maybe I'm over explaining the model or something, is I do agree that there are times where messaging on the left has been successful, but what I would say is that the only time where it's been successful is, so I've talked about, it's so important to have like this resonating model where everybody's on the same page. The only time that we're successful on the left is when we happen to all be on the same page. And it's very rare that happens, but when it does happen, it seems like for once in our lives, we're kind of like in control of things and nobody understands why it's happening. But like, so for the ICE stuff, having the video footage of all of that and everything was just like, that was too much for everybody on the left saw that. You didn't need any kind of actual coordination. You didn't need any kind of talking points delivered to you. It was just so there and so obvious that every politician started talking about it. Every media and alt media figure started talking about it. And then that was too much for it. You can't fight that on the right because it was just too overwhelming. The second example I can think of this was the, as silly as it was, the whole like when when Walz started calling, I think the Republicans and JD Vance weird. Everybody thought that it was like funny, and for whatever reason, top to bottom, everybody was using that weird insult. And for like a week, that for some reason that was just a really big thing that everybody was kind of on board with, and the Republicans were getting super ass pained about. So those instances that happen with us happen because it just so happens that everything. If you've ever seen a bunch of like metronomes swinging, like sometimes they're all in alignment. Like it just happens on our side organically sometimes, but very rarely. But the Republicans are creating media cycles like that every single fucking day in and day out. They're creating that inorganically, but people just can't see the difference. But I do agree with you on the ICE stuff, but for the reason why, I would say, yeah.
Fair enough.
I also think it's getting less and less effective. I think on the Republican side, you see they're basically underwater on every single kind of key issue for the American electorate. So I think you're reaching a point of like diminishing returns for their kind of media as well.
So here, this is like a hard thing to say, but like in a way I sort of agree with you, but in another way I don't at all. So we can say that this model doesn't work, or rather that like the Republicans are finally losing control of it. But like in my mind, one of the things that I argued about when Kamala was running against Trump in 2024, that if, like I said this over and over again, that like if Kamala were to win all 7 swing states, I would still consider this like a monumental failure of democracy. That if that election was anything beyond like a Reagan tier landslide, it is an indictment on the public conscience of the American people, that something has gone grossly wrong with our democracy, that somebody like Trump could be voted for a second time. Even if Kamala were to sweep the 7 swing states, that should be like a 49-1, 50-0 state win. That's just crazy to me. So like when we say like, you know, is Trump finally losing a little bit of the messaging war? Like I kind of sort of agree with you, but like, holy fuck, how much was he able to bear? How much was he able to tank? Like, what did it actually take? We've had two good white American citizens, the people that we all love, were assassinated by ICE. Not, I shouldn't say assassinated, but were murdered by ICE officers who are, I don't know, have they been charged with anything? Nope. They're completely whisked away and gone. We've got Nick Shirley, like the head Republican investigative journalist.
Fucking idiot, by the way. Yeah.
Runs around and shows office buildings and doesn't know what they are and is like driving. He's the reason why ICE went to Minnesota in the first place. It was where the huge oil came from. It's just thing after thing after thing after thing. Like eventually, any debt to the truth will at some point be realized. But my God, it's been so fucking much. Holy shit. So I would say there might be a success at some point, but I feel like the model's worked really well for them even if it eventually falls apart at some point, because holy fuck, they got through so much. It's insane.
I mean, at the point, I would say, I don't know if this is something we should, be belatedly optimistic or pessimistic about, but it felt like that election season itself in the developed world in democracies just seemed to be a referendum on the cost of living and unemployment or whatsoever. You saw all across the world all of these liberal states kind of swinging to the other side of the pendulum. So as you were saying earlier, yeah, it's fucking disgusting that Trump was elected again to a second term in power, especially after his efforts to overthrow the election in 2020. But I don't know how much of it was the voter base having an affinity for Donald Trump versus the voter base being really polarized by inflation itself into voting against their best interests. So I think there's things to be cautiously optimistic about with that election itself, even especially the fact that Kamala Harris overperformed with her peers in other developed countries across the world. So I mean, yeah, I'm totally disgusted by the fact that Donald Trump won that second term as well as a Canadian, but I'm not to the level that you are, maybe.
One of the other things that I think that the right does, recently it's not been so well, but in the past, is right-wing creators support each other very, very well. I mean, obviously now you see Laura Loomer versus Candace Owens, and it's very, very funny, right? But generally speaking, for the last 10 years, they really do circle the wagons around each other. Like when Nick Shirley gets criticized, you'll see them all coming about like Nick Shirley's a hero, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't see that on the left. Is that something we should start doing as well on the left? And
This is the media thing. If you're on the same team, you have to amplify. You have to be in lockstep. You have to defend. This is why Andrew Tate gets a pass from conservatives. This is why Plattner and Steyer get a pass from leftists, because they're on the same team. Once you're on the same team, you will make an excuse for everything. That's like this is a point that I brought up in the past. Whenever you hear somebody on the media say something like, "Man, like this party is really bad at messaging," that's always people who are center left, because people on the far right never say that because they know that the messaging for the candidate is their responsibility. Sean Hannity will never say Donald Trump isn't messaging effectively. Sean Hannity will do Trump's messaging. And then same thing on the far left for these guys. They will message for their candidates and like amplify whatever they say and cover for whatever issues they have. It's only the center left that hasn't figured out how to do this. Yeah.
I mean, Sean Hannity will stop being Catholic for Donald Trump. The guy's a fucking pissant. He's a craven, venal creature. These people disgust me so much on the right. Just fucking spineless.
Yeah. I mean, we're fighting with the fucking Pope. Like, how crazy. Like, Jesus. Yeah.
I'm not I grew up in India as a Hindu, so I don't really have the best knowledge of Abrahamic religions, but isn't like the Pope the fucking spokesperson for God on earth or whatever? Like, how sycophantic do you have to be as JD Vance to kind of put this fucking orange gorilla above your, religious leader? It's insane to me.
I mean, for Catholics, that's like your head honcho. And then I think generally, even if you're not Catholic, like you have some respect for the fucking Pope. But I mean, what are you going to do?
It depends. They did fight the whole Protestant movement, right? Was about protesting the Pope and other practices within the Catholic Church. And then you have the Eastern Orthodox who had a schism from Catholicism way back in the day. But no, generally, I'm no papist, right? I don't follow the Pope. But generally, yes, he is someone that Christians generally respect. They may not think of him as the spokesperson, but they generally tend to kind of understand that when he is quoting scripture or when he is speaking about Christ, he generally knows what he's talking about. One of the things that has been wild to me is seeing how many people who profess to be Christian, who profess to be Catholic, simply take the political side over their faith every single time. And it just shows where their loyalties lie at the end of the day. But I guess, is there value in Democrats kind of taking back the kind of Christian messaging that has
Absolutely.
worked so well for the religious right? Or should we stay away from
Absolutely.
it? What do you guys think?
I think, I think it's a good thing. I'm avowed atheist, but I think that messaging works. You look at people like James Talarico; he was able to win a primary against Jasmine Crockett, who was the favorite in that election. He uses a lot of really Christian messaging, but in a way that promotes democratic values as being in lockstep with the teachings of Christ or the Bible. Talking about kindness and magnanimity and hope. I think that kind of message works. I think it's hopeful. Obviously, it's contextual depending to where the person running is, but it seems like it's relatively successful. So I think there is a place for the democratic movement. I think James Talarico has kind of proven that.
Fair enough. What do you think, Destiny? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's always good to things like patriotism and things like religion. I don't know why these ever got owned by conservatives when they're fucking insane. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other questions or comments that you wanted to address with Destiny, Mr. Sid?
Me?
Yeah, I
No.
did set it up for you guys to have a conversation, right? Like, what?
Yeah,
What
no,
else?
it was no. I mean, nothing much else. I mean, this was a good conversation. I'm glad that Destiny and I see eye to eye on so much, even though we're, you know, I'm a little bit farther on the left than he is. I have a lot more, kind of Matt Brunig approaches to the economy or, capitalism. But it was great to find some kind of commonality. And no, I really have nothing else. No,
That's
unless
fair.
you've
Do you
got.
have anything for Sid? Otherwise, we got a couple callers that wanna, and I got some super chats, and we'll do that. But do you have anything that you'd like to ask Sid while he's here, Destiny?
No, not that I can think of off the top of my head. No.
Beautiful, wonderful. We love it, gang. We love to hear it. Let me read some of these super chats, and we'll pull in some of these callers and see what they have to say. $20 from Your Mom Shows Something or Other. One of the foundations of liberalism is confrontational debate for the purpose of truth seeking. The media apparatus Destiny describes suggests we can no longer seek truth this way. How can liberalism survive this environment?
I don't think it can. I think you have to bring back adversarial platforming, but everybody avoids it now because they've realized it's just a loser way to engage with media. It's better to just circle jerk your own side over and over again.
Same answer, Sid? Or
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same.
okay. $5 from Alishness. Some liberals are celebrating people, like burning down warehouses and Luigi Mangione. And while it's a nice fuck the system, normal people think it's crazy. Thank you for the $5. $2 from Nick Constanza to say 2026 progs are single issue anti-Israel voters, CMM. I don't know what CMM stands for, but fair enough.
Change my mind.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah. $5 from Alishness. You're never going to see the left overly succeed in messaging because progressivism is unknown and scary. Regressive policies are nostalgia, aka safety. Do we agree with this or no?
I'm probably not. I don't know, but that's a long.
Sure. $5 more from Alishness. Messaging on the right is so effective because it plays on fear, anger, and insecurities. These things always sell better than hope. And then $2 from Bad Horse to say wheat thins hit the spot. I guess they do. So thank you for the super chats, gang. Let's bring on one of the callers and see what he has to say. You're live. What do you got? Oh, you're deafened, buddy. Okay, can you hear us now? You're muted
Nice.
on your end.
Good job.
Mr.
Oh,
Sid.
sorry about that. I'm here.
Good troll. Good troll.
Okay, what do you got for us?
Sid, you were a fucking dev hater 5 years ago. What are you doing being a dev fan now?
Is this Dev?
Yes.
I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but I feel like we agree on stuff politically right now. We had some spirited debate. I was talking about this before the stream started or whatever. But yeah, I remember us having some debate. Maybe it was about private property or something like that. I vaguely remember, but I like that maybe you're one of the people on the right who move a little bit towards the center, especially when you saw how insane the Republican Party's gone.
Well, I don't think I moved. It's just that the right got worse. Like you and I had our debates like
Yeah, fair
5
enough.
years ago, and the right has gotten a lot worse. But I mean, I think that's one of the this is supposed to be a conversation about progressivism, and our progressive is really a part of the liberal movement. But I mean, you're a democratic socialist, and you've talked a lot about equality in this conversation, which I appreciate. But I mean, another big pillar of liberalism is property, and you disagree completely with liberals on the idea of property.
I don't know if I disagree entirely with the liberal conception of private property. I think if I went back, I would probably say that I want a more socialized ownership of non-produced assets, things like land or capital. But I don't think I entirely disagree with a conception of personal property. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, but I mean, personal property is the stuff that you personally own that you actually use for yourself. But one of the big parts of liberalism is that you can go into business for yourself, and then you can hire people, and you can build up, a corporation if you wanted to. And I don't think your model would allow for that, would it?
No, I think it totally would. I mean, I generally fall in line with a Matt Brunig approach to social democracy or democratic socialism, in which I believe in the existence of markets. The way that I would structure it is probably make it so that when a firm gets to a certain size, I would like a fund, whether it's a pension fund, whether it's a social wealth fund, or a union fund, to buy up a stake in the equity of a company, to sort of diversify the equity aspect of a company. And the debt side, I'd like maybe a nationalized bank to hold that. So I'm a lot more interested nowadays in the financialized sort of conception of socialism. How do you most effectively leverage equity markets? How do you most effectively leverage debt markets to make sure that you diversify the equity pool and that a wider portion of the population has ownership over a company or a firm?
Okay, I understand. I think that sounds a lot like what Econobo was saying a few months ago with what he wanted. And I mean, I think there's some problems with that idea, but I haven't fully fleshed it out in my brain yet.
What would you say your problems are?
Well, I haven't fully fleshed it out in my brain yet.
Okay, yeah, no worries. I mean, you'll find me amenable to markets. My problem is not really markets. I don't have a problem with markets. I think markets are a incredible way to kind of price scarcity, to drive goods and services between people who have the ability to pay, the willingness to pay, and the people who want to produce. I don't want to interfere with markets. My problem generally is that who do the gains from this system accrue to? And what is a more just way of distributing those gains? So if you had a corporation that right now, it's a public corporation, and instead of a minority of the population of the country owning the stack, how do we make it so that everybody in the country has a stack of that? What combination of funds could you use? What combination of investment banks, or what combination of nationalized banks could you use to buy their debt, buy their equity, whatever? So I guess it's the kind of Econoboy, Matt Brunig, James Bedlock conception of social democracy or democratic socialism.
I guess the question I have for you, Dev, I'm assuming you listened to the conversation or most of it.
Yep.
Was there anything that we didn't talk about that you thought that we should have, or is there anything that, as we were talking about, you substantively saw, hey, you guys are missing the mark, or you needed to focus on this more, etc.? What are your thoughts?
A couple things, actually.
Go ahead.
Sid, you said earlier that that the Republicans are you basically find the Republicans to be disgusting, and I understand that position very well. There's good reason for it. If we lived in like an alternate universe where the Democrats were overrun by authoritarian socialists doing exactly what Trump is doing right now, and the alternative was like normie neocons in the Republican Party, would you be voting red no matter who? Just to save democracy?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
I support, again, I want to reiterate, as I said in the start, I support liberal values. The reason that I consider myself under the umbrella of democratic socialism or social democracy is that I believe maybe there's a different system that can best embody the ideals of liberalism. So if it's a competition between authoritarian socialists that are trying to deprive people of their freedom, of their democratic rights, or neocons who are suboptimal, maybe on foreign policy, but do support a liberal democratic notion of a country, I will always support the team that believes in liberal democracy.
Right. When you say you think that democratic socialism can fulfill the values of liberalism better, I guess. What do you mean by that? I think I know what you mean by that, but I think I want you to tell me so I don't put words in your mouth.
I mean, when I think of maybe the main tenets of liberalism, and I have to interrogate myself a little bit more on this, I think about things like maximizing freedom, access to equal, having equal opportunity, democratic rights, and the protection of sort of individual rights. I think to be meaningfully free in a country, it requires a certain level of redistribution. Requires a robust welfare state for people to meaningfully embody the idea for freedom. Because, like, for example, if you're a single mom, right, you're working 80 hours a week, you're relying on federal programs that phase out as you move through the income ladder. I don't think you're meaningfully free. So I think if you had a welfare state, maybe that redistributed a little bit more, gave you some ability. You weren't chained to a job because of healthcare. I think that makes you a little bit free rather than just having the right to be free, if that makes sense.
No, I get it. Because I've talked to socialists before, and they'll say that like the values of the Enlightenment are liberty, fraternity, equality, and liberalism has failed to fulfill them, but socialism will, sort of thing. So I think I know where you're coming from. I guess the only issue is that like it seems like the state you're describing is still a liberal state. It just has a welfare state basically. You haven't like it's the same thing I said to a Boy back when that was happening a few months ago. Is that like the anarcho-communist would say that you're still a liberal, that you're not a socialist at all.
I mean, I never put stock in what anarcho-communists say because they're fucking 14 years old, so I don't really give a shit about what they say. But what I would say is that you can't look at, for example, the reason I call myself the American socialist, at least in the political lineage, is because I'm supportive of basically the conditions that made the Nordic model happen. And I don't think you can look at it in isolation. You can't just say it was just a welfare state that spontaneously came to be, right? You have basically three epochs of, the Nordic welfare state. It started off in the first wave, which was socialists who banded together under a party, under a parliamentary democracy, pushed together meaningful reforms under a parliament, and then put forward kind of socialist principles within a parliamentary framework to, redistribute more wealth, to have workers have a greater stake in the economy, to have a welfare state that is truly universal. It just didn't happen spontaneously. I think it required a certain level of political participation in the Swedish or Norwegian parliament to get to that stage. So to those people, I would say like I think they just look at that welfare state in isolation. And I think that's kind of problematic because you miss what preceded it. You miss what it took to get there, if that makes sense.
No, I understand. I just don't see how every country in the world could do this when they don't all live under the same conditions as the Nordic countries do.
Do you have anything for Destiny that you heard him say that you would disagree with him or anything like that?
I guess one thing, very early on, Destiny, you said that progressivism has nothing to do with Marxism. I just disagree with you on that. I think the intersectional lens is the same lens of analysis. It's just applied to other groups rather than class conflict.
Isn't Marxism definitionally not intersectional and like isolates everything to just like class struggle and tries to form a narrative around the struggle between the proletariat and the bourgeois, like through all of history? Isn't that the whole point of like Marxist analysis?
Yes, but the way the analysis plays out is that you end up giving greater moral weight to the people who have the power in the relationship, and the intersectionalists definitely do that.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if this is like a critical theory thing or if critical theory has origins in Marxist analysis or whatever, but I mean, it's still...
It does,
like,
actually, yeah.
Okay. I mean, like, it might be related in some way, but to reduce, especially when you're Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan, to reduce like all of progressivism or whatever to postmodern neo-Marxism, these were meaningless buzzwords that meant nothing, I think.
Yeah,
it's like if somebody said, if I'm in a room full of retards and somebody's like, the reason why we went to Iraq, we went to war in the Middle East was for oil. Like, this is a retarded statement. That's not true. But if somebody is like more intelligent, and I'm in a room of more intelligent people, and somebody's like, we were involved in a lot of conflict in the Middle East because of oil. It kind of is true, but like in a more roundabout way, that we prefer leaders there that are allegiant to the United States. We like oil traded in denominated dollars. We like easy access to oil that we're always going to have a guarantee to markets for. Like, so in a way, it's broadly true, but in the way of like we went to war with Iraq to steal their oil, that's retarded. That's not true, right? So like in a way that like is critical theory and all of this, can you draw like a line from like Marxism to critical theory and analysis to things that led to intersectionality or whatever? Sure. But like, is it the neo-postmodern Marxist, like Foucault himself came back from the dead to give us DEI and affirmative action that people like Jordan Peterson said? No, I think it's so stupid it's wrong, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's one of those things where it might be technically right, but it's so low resolution it's useless.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Dev, you can stay on if you like. I like you. You're my buddy. I'm going to bring a couple more callers on and see what they have to say. Okay. Let's bring on Alish. What do you got?
Sorry. Hey, what's up?
What do you have for Sid or Destiny? Go ahead.
For Destiny, I want to ask, like, why don't you push back enough? I feel like you don't push back enough on people like framing you as an extremist. Because I mean, people make videos about you all the time, being this crazy extremist, and I know that like you review the videos and you kind of like say, yeah, whatever. But like,
I mean, I feel like I do say that like my views aren't really extreme at all. But like,
no, they're not.
In terms of like pushback, I mean, I'm never talking to these people. These people never want to talk to me. Like, I will point out that like Hassan's views on the party are extreme. Like, you can see the polling data that was referred to earlier by Wick. Like the majority of Democrats either think we're in the right place or want us to move more towards the center. But if you listen to people like Hassan talk, they'll say that like my position is radical and extreme and everything. Yeah, I mean, like I kind of push back, but I never have an opportunity to even discuss these things with these people because again, the whole media cycle is supposed to just favor you, platforming people that are only going to agree with you all day.
Yeah, I'm talking specifically about like there was a video, the last video that, and the only reason I know this video is because I was in this video. It was when I was on Rob Noor. We were debating about like a couple different things, and extremism got brought up, and I was debating him on like, we have the right to take up arms against a tyrannical government, and he framed it as, well, you learned this from Destiny that you can just shoot the federal government whenever you want because they're being extremists and that's in the Constitution. And I'm like, he also blamed it on Wick.
Mm-hmm.
Wick.
Good job, guys.
So, I don't know what to say. Like, honestly, like, look, if someone just continuously lies about you,
and
the more pressing thing is that this was the fucking conservative position fucking forever. You heard so many times these stupid quotes of like, the tree of liberty is refreshed by the blood of patriots, and Benjamin Franklin said that any good democracy needs to have a violent revolution every 100 years, and this was the shit that they would say. Oh, we have guns to fight off a tyrannical federal government, like we have the right to defend. This was their talking points forever, but now that they're in power and now that they have now that they can practice systemic violence, now they don't like vigilante violence, but when they feel like the system is against them, then vigilante violence becomes acceptable, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if you hung out in like libertarian circles, you would see this one meme posted constantly, and it was George Washington with sunglasses on, and it said, "Me and my homies would have been stacking bodies by now."
Yeah.
And every time I repost that at a right winger, they lose their fucking minds because they know exactly what it says to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous that like you can literally quote the Declaration of Independence at them, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're calling for violence? You're so crazy. You're insane." Like,
so I guess the two questions I have for you, Alish, is how would you like Destiny to push back more against that, and also if you have anything for Sid while he's here. But go ahead.
This is just first, Destiny. I don't know how. I'm not gonna exactly tell him what I want him to do because I mean he's his own person. If he doesn't want to push back, that's on him. Right? Like, I can't tell him what to do, but I mean, Hassan, like you said, says insane things all the time. I don't know why my camera is so blurry right now. I'm sorry. I don't know what it's doing. But I don't know, maybe take a stronger stance against it, maybe like kind of come out and like decry these ideas, because a lot of people give
Wait, are you
you a
talking
lot
to
of
me, or are
hate.
you talking to
Yeah.
Sid? Oh, I mean, I feel like I do, but okay.
Well, I know you do, but like it's on your own platform.
Oh,
People
well,
don't
listen,
watch
if
your
I get
platform.
invited by any of these other people to talk, I mean, I obviously do it,
No,
but
yeah, but
you
that's
know.
the problem. That's why people don't invite you, because they're like, oh my God, your mod Hobbit follower came on and said that some dude was gonna, stab some guy, Constantine was gonna stab him, and then
No,
that goes
they don't want me
viral.
to go on because they're looking for excuses. Like anything that'll go viral will go viral because of whatever they want. Like that conversation was another conversation of me, trying to. I'm responsible for my community, and and I've thought a lot about, because my messaging was getting a lot more radical a couple months ago, and like I do have to think, like, do I want like a government executioner to come from my community? Like, how would I feel about it? I was like, I don't think I'm at the point where I would be comfortable with that. So like, I'll push back on that. That's fine, and I was okay with Hobbit follower talking to me about that. But like
Yeah, yeah.
Hassan was literally walking around with some dude on stream who was giving him a tour of whatever the fuck else at a school or something for like 2 hours, and the guy got arrested for making bomb threats to a whole bunch of places, and that didn't stick to him at all. But that, again, to be boring, broken record, it just comes down to that messaging apparatus. Like Hassan supported stuff, had a fucking Houthi terrorist to interview him and ask him anime questions. Like, Jesus Christ, yeah, that's
So,
Well, it's because he's so
also,
confident about it. Honestly, it's
no,
because
it's
he's
because
so
everybody's
no,
willing
no,
to
it
carry
is.
water
It
for him.
absolutely is. He's so confident. He's so cocky about it. He's like, yeah, whatever. They did that. It like, and I understand like you're defensive about it. I would be too. But he's so cocky, and he like brushes it off, and people just see him as it being some sort of like confidence, and like, well, now he's in the media and he's talking to people and he's pushing himself forward. And I know you're just not like that. That's probably
No,
why
I
he
think
gets away with
it's
it. And he
because like
does.
watch what happens if somebody comes out and attacks Trump. Every single the klaxons blare, and every single person is out there to defend Trump and carry water for him as much as possible. The same thing happens on the far left when it comes to Hassan. Like anytime there's like an attack piece about Hassan, just look at you can look at my Twitter feed, because I retweet a fight with a lot of these people. You've got Kalinsky out here carrying unimaginable amounts of water for him. You've got the Majority Report. You've got Emma Vigilant out here that are defending Hassan with their life. You've got the Pod Save guys that are defending Hassan with their life. You've got every single large like far left person who is willing to do whatever it takes to sane wash his reputation and to just like hide and obscure and lie about like obvious truths, and that's like, it's not because Hassan is confident, it's because they're all on the same team, and that's what you have to do when you're on the same team in today's like media world, I would say.
I agree. If just real quick, Destiny, if you had all your haters in a room right now, what would you say to them? What message would you like to get through to them? That, yeah, if they were here, just like what is the one thing that you would want to say to kind of get through to them, if you can?
Are we talking about haters that are like intentional haters, or just people that have
Yes,
like heard
intentional
a thing?
haters. Like if we
Well,
were,
if
I
we're
could
talking
get-
about like a gisticle or like a Hassan, there's nothing I could say to these people. They know that they're lying about me. Like that's it. They knowingly engage in bad information.
Okay,
If it's like
so
a
there's just
follower of
nothing.
theirs that just doesn't know, usually what I'll say is, if you hear me give like an insane take on somebody else's stream or whatever, just try to find the source video and just like watch like a couple minutes of it, because these takes are never as radical as they're presented as. Like it's funny. I just went through a Kalinsky video of this fucking retard doing this for Hassan. Hassan will say all day, my takes are out of context. My takes are out of context. But then when you go and look up the actual take, it's not out of context at all. Oftentimes it's even worse when you hear it in context. And then when you look at Kalinsky or Hassan or these other people defend Hassan's take, they're not saying that it was out of context and giving different context that changes how you view it. They're just saying that, well, actually his take is fully justified. Whereas for mine, like I think when a thing gets cut out, like I've never like. It should be a thing. It's almost like would I really go to Israel to give the IDF like tips on how to commit war crimes and hide them? That's a ridiculous position to take, right? Or do I really think that all Palestinians need to be genocided and I hate them, or that all protesters should be mowed down by Ku Klux Klansmen? Like you have to think I'm an especially evil person if that's it, And I think it's okay to have like, you can even have heavy criticism. You can have heavy criticism such that you don't even want to fuck with my content. If you're like, I just think Destiny's messaging or the rhetoric is just fucking out of whack, that's fine. But that's still like a fundamentally different thing than like, oh yeah, Destiny, he's the guy that wants protesters to be murdered by Klansmen. That's just, you're so far removed from reality at that point.
That's just the thing, that you say it so flippantly, and like that's why it's so easy to clip, because you just like say it with like, they don't get your sarcasm. Like they don't understand
It's not about
that
sarcasm,
you're being
though.
sarcastic.
Bro, look, we could run down how many Hassan clips talking about this is, if you want free Medicare, you should murder Rick Scott or whatever, or that Crenshaw got fucked in the eye socket by a brave Mujahideen soldier, or America deserved 9/11. Like there is like take after take after take. It was like, holy shit. But he's got a whole team that comes out to defend him on all these, so it's A-okay. He tweeted a picture of the homemade firearm or whatever that I think assassinated Shinzo Abe or whatever. He's tweeting this. I think that was at a congressman. It's like, holy fuck.
Oh yeah, I mean he brags all the time about like China should just be we should just be China, we should just have communism, and like that's what we need.
Gotcha.
But like you're so easily clippable that people just see these clips and they're like, oh my god, Destiny is insane, like he's done all this crazy insane thing. But that kind of does play into the next thing that I was going to bring up, which kind of goes for both of you guys can answer. It does have to do with
One
specific
last
messaging.
thing, then we got to cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Specific messaging, and anybody can pick this up, but like one thing I wanted to comment on is there is specific messaging on the right that like it's kind of like people repeat the same things over and over again, which kind of solidifies the propaganda in people's heads. Like people will always say Trump is the most transparent administration ever, or Trump is the strongest president on XYZ. And I do see how that plays into on Hassan on his messaging, and then why Trump's messaging is so powerful on his side, because every single time one of his sycophants stands up and says something either about him or to him, or is talking about what's happening, they always repeat Trump is XYZ, Trump is positive thing. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I mean, like, there's a lot of true. I call these just truisms or whatever about Trump that are just not true. That he was good on the budget. That Doge was helpful. That he's honest. That he's a negotiator. I mean, like, I think these are all dumb talking points. Or they're good talking points, but I don't think any of them are true. I mean, I usually try to.
Oh my god! Don't you call me dumb? Oh,
what?
Okay.
Or no, I mean that like I don't think I think the points are not true. I mean, like, so yeah, I fight against this when I go.
Yeah. I know. I understand. Well, that's why all the left has this. I mean, all the right has the same talking points. Is they hear people say them. That's why all their talking points are consistent across the board. They all hear them.
Well,
okay, I'm sorry.
Owlish, actually, Owlish. I think what you're getting at here is just it's not something that can be solved just by honing up your messaging. There's always going to be when you're dealing with a bad faith movement like MAGA or like a lot of socialists. Sorry, said is that like you have max consideration versus minimum consideration, where they will give the most possible leeway to their allies and the least possible leeway to their enemies, and that's just how it is. You just have to deal with that. The best example I can think of is Jack Posobiec, back when Biden was president, said 86-46. And then later on, you had somebody say on the Democrat side say, I forget who it was, he said 86-47. And they all react. Was it Comey? Okay. Well, they all reacted like they were threatening to kill Trump. And it's like, hold on. Jack Posobiec said the same fucking thing. And no one said anything about it back then.
He made stickers about it. Like, literally. Like,
yes.
there were stickers and products, and you could, like, buy it. Like, what?
Yeah. So it's just the fact that they will always give the maximum amount of consideration to their allies, the minimum amount of consideration to their enemies, and you just have to deal with that. Like,
but just remember, if you're trying to analyze this under even I would take issue even with your framing of like max consideration, least consideration. You're missing what's happening. They're not giving consideration to any side or not charitability to the other side. It's just a team thing. Like, this guy is on my side, I've got to defend it. There is no charitability reading. It's he's on my side, I have to defend it, and let's figure out how. And that's it. It's not like what's the most charitable framing, how can I blah blah blah. That might be part of like down the road. And then same thing with the opposite side. They said it, we fight against it. Let's go. Obama wants to attack Iran. Look at the polling on Republicans and Democrats' support for Obama attacking Iran in his, I think it was in the second term. And then look at the polling support for Trump attacking Iran. The Democrats were mostly the same from the first time and the second time because they have a stance on it. Republicans 180'd completely to super minority under Obama, super majority under Trump. And there was more of a reason to attack Assad under Obama than there was under fucking Trump, because Trump attacked him for the same reason, having to do with gas attacking his own people. So it's not about a charitability thing or like it's like it's a team sports thing through and through 100%.
Yeah, like money for Ukraine is demonic. Money for Israel is okay. I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, you're okay.
All right, bye.
Love you.
See, I think I agree with you.
Good.
Destiny is just that the charitability is how they justify it later.
Yeah, that's a down the road thing though. Yeah. But they might not even care. They might just fucking lie to your fucking face. They might say, fuck it, I don't even know how to defend this, so I'm just going to fucking lie about it. Like how they lie about who was president. Like, how many people... Charlottesville was a very fine rally. There were good people on both sides, okay? Like, Charlottesville was not as big of a deal. Heather Hay, remember early on when they used to say, I know this because you ran in all these circles, where they used to say she died of a heart attack, right? I think Sargon and all of them used to say that. Now that this SPLC thing has come out, it's just like the J6 thing. It's just like the COVID stuff, right? Oh, actually, Charlottesville was a deadly rally and it was horrible, but it was all organized by the SPLC. It was the Southern Poverty Law Center. Or like J6, that was a peaceful protest, nothing happened. Actually, it was Antifa organized. It was deadly and they organized it, right? It like
one of the most...
Yeah,
one of the most insidious parts of the SPLC lawsuit, right, is that no matter whether it ultimately gets a conviction or goes through, they could drop it tomorrow. Nothing more could be done. But I think that the indictment has already done the damage that they wanted to do.
Of course.
It's giving a talking point to people to say, none of this was real. It was all fake, right? It was all done by the Democrats. The Democrats, the SPLC, they all funded it. And it's just a remarkably dishonest presentation of what the indictment actually says.
Yep.
Right? If you go through the indictment, because initially when I saw it on my feed, I thought, oh shit, they were secretly funding these groups
and
whole
organizing
time?
the protests themselves. That's what it looks
Yeah.
like. Yeah. And that's what most people are going to take from it. Yeah. Or already have taken from it. Yeah.
And when you look at it, there's like, oh, no, they were just paying people to rat, which is a remarkably different thing. And you can have issues with that, right, if you want, right, like moral issues with like paying someone who's high up in a position in a hate group in order to steal documents or to, spy on the group. And you can have issues with that, but it's not the same as single-handedly funding organizations to Unite the Right rally and other things. It's just a remarkably different thing. And so, yeah, let's bring on, so I'm ranting. I'll bring on the next contestant on whatever the fuck this is.
Contestant?
Yeah, whatever. Okay. Hi, you're live. What do you got? You're muted on your end, sir or ma'am. Okay, if you don't unmute yourself, we're going to move you out and cycle you. Okay, there we go.
Oh.
Hi, you're live.
Can you guys hear me fine?
Yes, what do you got?
Okay, mine's mostly for Destiny. I think it applies more to him, but in general, I think the big thing that I'm noticing a lot of that I'm very against is the idea of like fighting authoritarianism with authoritarianism type concept, right? I think when you're living through historical moments, it's really hard to pinpoint the things that actually matter and the things that are just kind of noise in the historical context. I think we're getting bogged down by a lot of noise nowadays that's making us change our opinions on things that we just know to be true, right? Like we have enough historical knowledge, we have enough stories, we have enough understanding of the way we should be running government, the way we should be treating each other, yada yada, right? We have endless examples of this. Now, if we're talking about like the average dumbass American that doesn't get a good education and is just like brain rotted online, I don't know, like there's just so many different conversations to have here, but I don't know if these people are worth like even considering in context of the media we're creating, right? Is this making sense? Do you have any pushback so far?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean or what.
So a lot of the takes that you're having, right, are like, well, if they're going to do this, we got to do this too. Like, or hey, the only way to win is to be a cult. Hey, the only
right
like,
now, yes, but like the
talking.
reason why I'm giving this analysis is because what I'm saying is that like if we don't change the environment, like it's over. You cannot win playing like the good game when the other guy is allowed to play the bad game. That if you have a boxing fight against the other dude and he's allowed to show up with a machete, you can't outbox that guy. You're going to lose every single time. He's going to chop your head off.
Is MAGA stronger now or a year and a half ago?
I would say that they were stronger a year and a half ago, but I mean like
I would agree.
But like it's such a monumental failing that like where we're at right now is not acceptable. Winning the midterms and like what comes after, this is not acceptable. The fact that we got to this point is not acceptable. So the fact that they might be weaker now is just
So my worry is, I agree, it is not acceptable. My worry is if we start going in the direction of fighting their authoritarianism with authoritarianism, like, and again, I'm using this broad concept, right? I'm not specifically talking about even like authoritarianism as a label, right? But the broad concept of fighting their toxicity with toxicity back and forth, you don't end up creating a better political environment going forward, right? Like the way that I'm kind of thinking about this is we seem to be sacrificing a lot of long-term advantage for short-term gain, so to say, right? That seems, and so like you can apply this to economic theory as well, whatever you want, that concept. We seem to be doing that a little bit too much to the point where I worry that, a lot of the things that would bring moderates back to our side are things that we would no longer be able to say, right?
Moderates don't give a fuck about any of this. Nobody is principled in terms of how they engage with media or any of that shit.
So sorry, maybe let me change what I mean by moderate. What I mean is like people that are otherwise largely politically disengaged. I think social media nowadays definitely like re-engaged a lot of people that just weren't politically active or interested at all previously, right? So that's
what would
like
you
a whole
say?
other
Would you have advocated for going to war with the South when they seceded from the United States?
See, and this is yeah, and this is getting into the thing that I also wanted to ask you is like I'm becoming an anti-federalist at this point, to be perfectly honest, right? Like at this point, I think returning to a more
Doubtful right
states-based.
again?
No.
What are we talking
How can you say? How can you say? Wait. How can you say you're worried about?
Not as extreme. Not as extreme as that. What I'm saying is the federalist attitude that we have, where hey, if abortion rights are important to me in my state, then it ought to be important to the people in Mississippi.
Hold on, wait.
We need to give up on this.
How can you just say that you're worried that we're going to lose something important about ourselves, and now say that we need to not be like a unified country as much? Like I feel like if we lose our concept of federalism, then I think we've kind of totally lost ourselves.
Well, no. I mean, that's not true at all. Think about the founding of our country and the Constitution itself, right? Have we expanded or limited? Have we expanded or limited federal powers throughout our history?
Expanded. Our country was founded in the 1700s. It was a totally different world. Part of the reason why we have the oldest surviving constitution in use of any country on the planet is because it's been able to adapt and be flexible going forward. Everything on the planet.
Do you think if we return to 95% of issues being solved in a state, that states would start falling apart? Like, do you think we require the federal government to keep this whole thing running?
And to be competitive on the world stage? Yeah, I think so.
So again, and I think like very basic concepts
we gotta
military protectionism, right? Like interstate commerce. Obviously, this is the federal government's purview, right? But especially like when we start getting into cultural issues, things like this, I don't think states like all of a sudden fall apart. We don't have like a perfect union anymore. This is kind of just silly.
We don't have a perfect union, but would you say that like with the Civil Rights Act and the voting, are these like mistakes to you, or?
No, obviously not, right? So
you say obviously not, but that was one of the largest expansions of federal government power, was like getting rid of like the separate but equal doctrine, enforcing like desegregation or whatever. Like they had to send marshals and stuff to schools to ensure this. So I mean, I'm sympathetic to some extent. No, I'm not sympathetic towards this like anti-federalist idea. But I think there are things that even you would agree that like the federal government, more than just trade and military protections, that there are even some cultural or social things that we probably need the federal government to take a hand in enforcing.
And I think with extreme cases like slavery and stuff like this, that has a much larger argument, right?
Segregation
Obviously.
and Jim Crow is not slavery, right? It's not as bad as slavery. It's just not equal treatment in some places, but
okay.
It's up there. It's up there.
No,
anyway,
hold on. Let me be clear. No, it's not. It's not. 1960 black people were not. They were much better off than black people who were slaves. Okay, okay. Now, obviously, civil rights and everything was good, and getting rid of like separate but equal doctrine and getting rid of like Jim Crow laws and all this stuff, it was good. But you were significantly better as a black person in 1960 than you were in 1760 or whatever, or in the 1800s.
Of course, yeah, of course, yes.
Okay.
But I would still say that's crossing the line for what I'm arguing for, right? But anyway, let me just boil it down real quick before I go. The main thing is when we start abandoning principles to fight against what we see, we end up in a nuclear arms race scenario, right? Like the theoretic nuclear arms race.
Well, sure, but hold on. Can I just ask? Hold on, because even the example that you're using, right? We end up in a nuclear arms race, right? Wasn't it everybody getting nukes that ensured that nobody used them? Like, wasn't the nuclear arms race like good? Rather than just having one side have nukes and nobody else does?
I'm talking about the game theoretic nuclear arms race. So the concept of the only way.
Wouldn't it be nice if Ukraine had nukes right now, right?
Yeah. And the concept that the only way that you can you can't unilaterally disarm and come to some agreement like, hey, this is the weapon that we're not going to create. The way you win the nuclear arms race is by attaining the weapon before the other person, right? That game theoretic. And so the issue that I have is we end up in a scenario where neither side is fighting on the principles that we just know to be true, all right? We these are the things that make us liberal or make us whatever we are, right? We start losing those just to be able to have the short-term gain of political win or whatever, right? In George Bush era politics, I remember feeling really dreadful and really down. Now, looking back on that, it's like, we lived through it, right? There's some things in my field that are still lingering that suck ass, but we've largely been able to live through it. And I think this is going to largely be the same thing. I think we're fighting a little too much. We're abandoning principles for things that are just noise. We're not going to remember them in 10 years. They're not going to be all that relevant to what our kids are learning in school about this age, right? And I just worry that we go down that road too much, right? That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Well, Kirby, real quick, I'll hop in here for like 30 seconds, okay? Just real quick. When you came in, you talked about using authoritarianism to fight authoritarianism. It's important to realize that what authoritarian governments do, liberals might do sometimes, but only during emergencies, and they have a tendency of giving that emergency power back legitimately when the emergency is over. So a great example of this is COVID, right? COVID lockdowns were authoritarian. They just were. But you know what happened? Liberal governments gave the powers back when the emergency was over. And
same with
governments
like
don't
the
do that.
gerrymandering going on, right? The voters are voting to do a thing that they are against in principle in order to. But this is kind of my whole point, right? Because now we've lost the you can't have an argument with conservative anymore against gerrymandering because we've done it now, right? Like,
What? Wait. Why do people say that? That's the dumbest argument I've ever heard in my life. We absolutely can. Democrats are willing to get rid of gerrymandering. We've been willing to get rid of gerrymandering. Why would we not be able to have the argument now just because we've done it? Like, what? In response to them doing it?
Going to bring up that we've done it. What do you mean? So what's the argument against?
What do you mean the argument? The argument is not based on past behavior. If you try to break into my house with a gun and then I shoot you in the leg and then you run away and I'm like, we should ban guns from the neighborhood, it's not good. Would you go, well, now that you shot me, you can't make that argument anymore? Yeah, you just made the argument. What do you mean?
I think that's a little different.
You can't keep saying every example I give is different when I'm literally addressing the core issue of your points. The reason why I brought up the nuclear thing for the nuclear thing is that having countries aim nukes at each other is what kept people from nuking each other. Having a single country with nukes, it was the only time anybody ever nuked each other, and it probably would be more nuking if nobody else had them. When it comes to being able to argue on the principle of a matter, doing something in response to the other side doing it is not the same thing as them doing it unprovoked. If somebody punches you, and while you're saying we should not punch each other, then somebody punches you and then you punch them back, and now they're like, well, now you can't tell anybody not to punch each other. That's bullshit. No, of course you can. You can still advocate for that position.
In the media environment where everything's done through 20-second clips, the conservatives are now going to be yelling nonstop. The liberals like gerrymandering. Hey, look, they did it. Right? This isn't that hard to understand.
Wait. But what were they arguing before? They were saying the same thing before. they were gerrymandering everything. Like, why? Like, I think if anything, we're closer now to getting rid of gerrymandering on a federal level. I think we could get closer. We're closer now than we were after Texas did it. 100%. I think we would be closer now. I don't know if Republicans would come on board with it, but I think we could get there better now that they've seen what the result is.
Yeah, I guess the question for you, dear caller, is what are Republicans going to start doing differently that they weren't before, right? Like, they were always saying this. This was a constant refrain. And again, when you ask them and when you press them, most of them will say, like, and you'll be like, well, what about Texas? What about these other states that are gerrymandered on the Republican side? And they will literally say things like, well, it's good when we do it, and it's bad when you do it. And that's really their only consideration. Like, we're not fighting principled people here.
Yeah, I mean, so the way that I see it, like politics in general in this country, right, is there's essentially two teams, right, obviously, and then there's a bunch of people that they're not rostered, right? So they're changing teams. They can change teams willy-nilly. They can change teams election to election, whatever it is, right? You are trying to fight the other team in a way that brings people to your team. That is the ultimate objective, right? So the people you're bringing up are people that I just
not
see
just that, but like that is one consideration. But the other consideration is stopping the other team for doing the things that are going to hurt you long term, right? So there are multiple considerations here. I agree with you that, and I've argued against Destiny on this in certain aspects, right, of his of the way he talks about certain events, right? We've had this conversation before, but when it comes to things like gerrymandering, this is something where if we don't fight back, that's it. Like, this is just
like the question.
Well,
do you think it was
to be very clear,
do you think
the gerrymander? I wasn't arguing against the gerrymandering. I want to make that really clear. I was adding an example to what Dev was saying.
Wait, so do you think it was acceptable for
California's doing?
Do you think it was acceptable? Why do you think it was acceptable for Democrats to engage in that fight back there?
The gerrymandering for the California.
Yeah.
I mean, the same reason you do, right? Which is that the Republicans were doing it in Texas, and this was the way to fight back, so to say. Right?
Well, then I feel like that is counter to the entire argument that you just laid out before. Am I crazy?
The authoritarian argument?
That we're practicing behavior that we ideally wouldn't want in order to counter the behavior that they're doing that we don't want.
Yeah, didn't you just use Virginia as an example of this? I forget.
I don't think I brought up Virginia, but I would have brought up California. Yeah, I mean, so obviously there's lines here, right? To which degree are we willing to sacrifice principles or whatever? So like, I'll definitely concede that that's like somewhat counter to it, but I don't see what I wish that the California would have done differently and Virginia done differently is I wish we would have added clauses that would essentially say, "Hey, if Texas doesn't do it, we won't do it." Right? I think that would have been way more acceptable.
Well, hold
to
on,
me, like,
just real
made me
quick.
way
Like
happier.
we've tried to get on a national level gerrymandering banned. Democrats have put forth, I think, 5 proposals in the last 4 years, or maybe it's 4 proposals in the last 5 years. And keep in mind, if Republicans wanted to stop gerrymandering, they control the House, they control the Senate, they have 6-3 on the Supreme Court, they have the White House. If they wanted to draft something and pass it, they absolutely could. And you got to ask yourself, why don't they?
So
And
I think we got a little maybe off the
I'm
plot
giving you a
because
response, but then we do got to get to more people because
obviously I agree that Republicans do not want to get rid of gerrymandering. It typically helps them more than it helps liberals. Liberal states overwhelmingly vote to get rid of gerrymandering in their own states, right? This is all very obvious, right? I forgot exactly why Dev brought up the thing, but that's how we got onto gerrymandering in the first place. It was trying to make an analogy, but yeah.
But thank you for calling in, buddy, and I'll talk to you later.
Let's not be extreme, boys.
Okay, extremely moderate.
Actually, Sid, I do have one more thing to ask you if you don't mind, since I gotta
Sure,
get
man,
in,
go ahead.
in a bit. So
Yeah, me too. I gotta head out in like 2 minutes. It's like 2 a.m. in Spain. I gotta go to bed. Yeah, ask me. Go
Okay,
ahead.
sure. Earlier in the debate, you said, "I don't know what that poll means when the Democrats need to move to the center," and you said that a couple times. So, what do you mean when you say you don't know what that poll means?
Just trying to think about when that was in the conversation. Was that when Wick brought up the polling for what Democrats should do?
Yes, and the polling said something like 46 or whatever it was, that they have to move more to the center.
42%. But yeah.
42, yeah. And you said, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I probably was saying was that right now they have no control over, really any part of the legislative or the executive branch or the judicial branch. So when we say they need to move towards the center, what are we talking about? Do we mean messaging, which is something that Democrats seem to have tempered after the 2024 election? Do we mean in terms of what they run? I don't understand really. So yeah, I guess that was my probably a retort to that.
Okay. Well, no, it's just, I mean, it seems kind of obvious to me that, like, when Biden had to, for example, disavow a lot of the violence in 2020, and when a lot of other candidates didn't, and that's kind of what got him the win, at least in part, right? There doesn't seem to be an appetite
by the
in
violence,
America.
you mean?
Didn't Biden?
like the
Hold
Black
on.
Lives
Wait.
Matter
By the
protest.
time
The BLM
by the time he disavowed that violence, wasn't he already the nominee?
He might have been. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah,
It's possible.
Little bitch.
But nonetheless, he still had to disavow it to win the general, and there just seems to be no appetite among the American electorate for left wing rioting, basically. And I think
But
if
we're
you're
talking about something that
gonna,
happened 6 years ago, right? I mean,
well, sure, but I still
ostensibly
think
this
there's
poll is from.
yeah, but I still don't think there's an appetite
Yeah.
for it, frankly. Like I just when people say like, hey, you have to. When people say Democrats must move to the center, in my experience, what they're saying is like, hey, there's some crazy fucking shit happening on the left, and it might just be college kids, and it might just be rioters, but the Democrats should have no party in that.
Okay, so like right now, if you were to say Democrats need to move more to the center, what do you mean? On what exactly?
I'd say I'd say
what is okay?
less crazy progressivism, more like normie neoliberalism, I guess.
I mean, I don't think any Democrats specifically are pushing anything super out of left field. I don't really see elected Democrats when we're talking about that. I mean, if you're talking about the electorate, yeah, sure, you can make that argument, but again, like, what does that mean? How do you discipline the electorate into, having a cohesive kind of thing? It goes back to the conversation about the apparatus or messaging or whatever. The answer to that is a lot more complicated than the first one, which is I don't really think Democrats are being so outside of the pale right now. I don't really know what we mean by moderate their messaging or whatever.
No, I agree with you. I think like if you rewind the clock, 5 years or 7 years, you had the squad running around and the squad is fucking gone. Like AOC is moderated. Bernie's kind of out of the picture. A lot of the more far left elements of the Democratic Party have been losing, and I personally think it's a good thing. But I think that's kind of what people mean, really.
Sure.
Cringe.
Okay.
Okay. Well, Sid, I know you got to go, and I want to give you the out
Yeah.
right now. Do you have any last words? Where can people find you? Closing thoughts, etc. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'll do it really quick. Yeah, you guys can. My name's Sid. You guys can find me on @LilBabyGandhi on Twitter. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Wick. Really nice talking to you, Destiny. It was a really good conversation. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I guess nice chatting to you for the first time as well, Dev, after a couple years of animosity, I guess.
Years of
Yeah.
antagonism.
Yeah. I'm glad. I'm glad we're relatively on good terms now. But yeah, thank you guys so much for everything. It was a pleasure, and yeah, talk soon.
Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Okay, Destiny, do you have time for the rest of these callers, or are you good?
Yeah, go chew through some. Yeah.
We'll choose to sit through some. And Dev, of
I've
course, you're
got to go though. It's dinner time. Have fun, guys.
later, buddy.
Thanks for having me on. See
Be
ya.
careful.
Okay, welcome to the show. What do you have, dear caller?
Yo, what up? Oh, by the way, that previous caller, I'm from Virginia, and we just annihilated the Republicans on that. So, yeah, it is really fun to actually do that kind of stuff. Just saying.
Yeah.
Number two, if we think about like local elections and stuff like that, like I'm kind of involved now in like the Virginia like local stuff. What I've noticed for a lot of the younger people that are like joining the groups and stuff like that and getting more involved is that there is a nice like focus on progressivism, but it's not like the over the top online stuff that we see. So I think there's like a really easy way to balance that kind of stuff, especially now that we have like a trifecta down here. We're actually putting out a lot of progressive legislation, especially in the past like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Where do we, I guess my question would be like, how do we find a way to balance the online progressives versus like the actual on the ground progressives here? Because I think there's a big disconnect there. And I agree with you that the algorithms are an issue and stuff like that, but
You just have to see
I don't
the
know if you have
difference
any thoughts
between
on
like real life. Like again, every district is different. Like there's going to be progressives in Omaha, Nebraska, but that doesn't mean they're going to be the same as like progressives in California. Like just don't let the online shit brain rot people too much, or make everybody feel like every single thing that they do has to be representative of like the national progressive or left wing movement or whatever else. Yeah.
Just mock them endlessly too, and make it really clear that the online extremists have no place in this party. That's my answer personally, but you know, is what it is. Anything else you got for us, sir? While you're here,
let's say if was it Abdul Al Saeed? That's the guy in Michigan, right?
I believe
If
so.
he wins the primary, would you guys like be fully behind that?
I don't know. I'd have to look more into him. I don't like a lot of his messaging and everything so far. But what would he be? What he's running for senator, right?
Yeah.
I'm like I would 90% lean towards yes. It would take a lot to move me off of that, just because I would imagine it'd be another blue vote. I mean it's possible, but my guess is it would be a 90% yes. Yeah.
Would there be something that you would like? Is there some kind like if you had to bridge that gap? Would there be some like policies that you support that you would be willing to not abandon, but like put to the side in order to compromise with like that version of progressives when it comes to like kind of cooperating across like state lines and stuff?
Not ideologically, not really, no. But I would just support a blue senator over a red one, because I would imagine they'd vote blue more often than not.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty much there too. I was just kind of curious what you guys
No,
thought.
that seems fair. Thanks for calling in, buddy. Okay,
No problem. I'll see you guys.
gonna get to as many as we can, as fast as we can. Hello, you're live. Hello.
Hey, what's up? Sorry, I just muted the stream. I just wanted to ask what it feels like. A lot of the time, these panels, you guys do them, and then you don't really come away with like action plans for the people on the panel. I noticed that like Ryan Getty pointed this out last time he was on. Is there any like action plan that you guys are going to take going forward from like this chat or any recent chats about like liberalism, stuff like that?
I don't know if the conversations have necessarily been actionable conversations. I apparently this one week set up to have me talk about my differences with the Sid guy, so I don't know what's actionable.
I don't.
Sorry, yeah.
Hold on. No,
Uh-oh.
we gotta correct some misinformation. Sid asked me to set it up so that you guys could have a conversation on progressivism. That's what I did. It was a little too for my taste,
I
it was
did
a
miss
little
the
too,
beginning, for what
Destiny
it's
is
worth.
so right all the time, and I was
True.
like, okay, come
True.
on, let's get something real here. But that was just a my taste thing. So.
Hater.
Yeah, I do think though, one thing that we could be doing, if we're trying to kind of like distance ourselves from the like tanky types, the Hassan types, is to just stop calling them progressives. I've noticed that that's a thing that a lot of these like publications will tend to do when they write about him. They'll say that he's like a progressive commentator, but it's like, is he? You know, like in what ways is he progressive? I feel like one way that we could go is just hammering all of the ways that he isn't, essentially. Like, you know, he's got all of these like racist rants, he's got like misogynistic rants. If we
don't we
could
do
get some
that?
kind of like
when it comes to me, Destiny and stuff, like how are we engaging with Hassan that we shouldn't be, or how should
Yeah, I
we
would
be
say I
engaging
try to make that distinction all the
that we
time, that
aren't?
he's not progressive. This is why I point out that he always reduces everything to class and never fights on social issues and hates identity politics. So I agree with you
yeah,
there.
I do like that. I guess yeah, you do a pretty good job of it. I would just like to see it like more from the kind of like center left space.
Me too.
Like when we're thinking about progressives, I feel like it would be better if the prototypical progressive is somebody like David Pakman or like Brian Tyler Cohen. And it's just really annoying that so many people who call themselves progressives see Hassan as their prototype. It just it doesn't make a lot of sense. I would like it if we could, you know, if some like creative type or somebody with video editing experience could like edit together some compilation of, you know, all of Hassan's like crazy unhinged rants at different like
Bit difficult out
marginalized
of
groups.
context,
And
but yeah.
well, it doesn't matter though, right? We're trying to, my goal here would be to show it to people who call themselves progressives and then be like, this guy's your leader, like this guy is the progressive. And then another thing is people
Last thing, then we
in,
got a cycle. So yeah.
yeah, I gotta leave anyway. But people in real life have a very different image of what it means to be progressive than people online. Like this, when you ask people in real life, they think of like Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg as progressives. And I actually think they have their finger is a lot more on the pulse than people online in this issue, which is weird to say. Like the median voter has better political instincts on this. But yeah, I feel like it would be nice if we just kind of played into that a little bit more. Like when I think of everybody that was on this panel, I think everybody on this panel is more progressive than tankies, unironically, which it's just very frustrating to see people calling tankies progressives.
I understand. Well, thank you for calling in, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Oh, other things. Sorry, final thing. I do have a couple of essays that I think would be interesting, Destiny, for you to read on stream, about like the fairness doctrine you talked a few weeks ago, about some kind of like updated way that we could try to regulate speech and things like that.
Okay.
I don't know how I would like send those to you, but
Post it on the subreddit.
Do it. Okay. Thank you for being here.
sure. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, you're live. What do you got?
Sorry for the wait. Yeah, I really appreciate the show's been great today. But to my question, one of the things that I keep on hearing from a lot of liberal commentators right now, which frankly is very exciting to me, is a big analysis on the right-wing media system and a desire for not necessarily the same thing for liberals, but at least a new and invigorated media system for liberals as an effort to counterbalance that. And so, Destiny, I was really wondering what your vision is for that kind of a project.
I mean, this would have to be like a top-down, like starting with a think tank from the Democratic Party to the DNC being involved with Democratic politicians, messaging with going onto like center-left shows that are agreeing to kind of like carry the same message. Like it would have to involve a lot of these people being coordinated together. Personally, I would prefer rather that we like removed certain protections from social media platforms that have algorithmically generated news feeds or whatever. I would prefer that route rather than turning everybody into like a sycophant. I think is not the way I would prefer to go.
Excellent. That was my main question. Thank you.
Well, that was quick and easy. We love it. Okay. What do you got for us, sir or ma'am?
Sage, that's my name. Destiny. I gotta push back against the other dude that was in here, Kirby, on what he said about going back to the anti-federalists, or going back to the Articles of Confederation. There's a few key things that the guy doesn't understand about this whole time period.
Hold on. Are you here to argue with the guy that was here a couple?
No, I just want to set the record straight and give Destiny some context on why why that shit is stupid. Okay, for one, we didn't have an executive branch in the Articles of Confederation. Well, what does that mean? Well, one, it meant that we couldn't put down the Shades Rebellion in this time period because we didn't have an executive branch and we couldn't effectively manage this crisis. That's one big issue. Another thing is Congress could pay its debt around this time period because the Federalists, or Confederation, everyone had to agree on paying their taxes to pay the war debt. It was everyone had to agree, and if one of them didn't, we couldn't handle
Tell you what, man. Okay, I'm sure if you DM him, I can set up a debate between you guys or something, and I'll host it, and it'll be fun. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just want to set the record straight here because
record straightened. We got it. Thank you for calling. Okay.
Good job.
We'll do 2 more, and then we'll call it a day. Okay. Second to last one. What do you got?
Oh shoot! Hi. What was I gonna say? I was under the mindset of just I guess in terms of trying to help progressives, or trying to have a better fight against I guess your far left tankies or stuff like that. I feel I guess for both of you, what's your thought about a marketing strategy? Because when I see with the right, it as silly as it is, once the Republican Party has a slogan "Make America Great Again, Make America Healthy Again." As dumb as it sounds, but it's simple. They have something to go off of. I guess where do you guys lead on do you think marketing would improve some sort of marketing strategy to fight both the right and the far left? Would that improve I guess the political spectrum as a whole, or you think it's just maybe just a little bit?
I mean, better marketing. Yeah, better marketing and better slogans is always a good thing, right? Yeah, I would never disagree with that.
Well, I guess to give it an example, for me, with some of my friend groups, I started considering the I guess not progressives, but maybe far lefts and tankies, certain silly stuff STDs or STIs. I call them socialist tankies, dummies, dumbasses, or what have you. Silly, but it's kind of I mean, hey, who wants to be an STD? Am I right?
True. Yeah. I'll keep that in
Your
mind.
mom does.
Good one.
Wait, what?
Okay, you heard me. Okay, great. Last caller. Hello, you're live. Hello, you're live. You got to unmute yourself, buddy, friend.
Hello.
Hi. What do you have?
Question is about how current media, with the progressive tanky side, seems to be focusing on engaging normies, by extending their reach, becoming more seen in the media. So isn't that kind of what we should be doing as the progressive liberal side then, is engaging with the less political, less online, more normie streams of the media system to
Yeah, but are you? I'm just curious.
Access to these people.
Are you a big fan of mine?
I watch you a sizable amount.
Who else do you watch?
I watch Hutch. I watch PodSave on occasion, and random other politics stuff here and there when I come across it.
Okay, I only ask because I actually don't think they do a good job at engaging other forms of media. I think they actually do an exceptionally bad job at it because there's.
I agree with you, but that's the direction. That's their.
You agree
plan.
with me? That's the exact opposite of what you just said. What?
That their plan is to try to do that. They're just
I
not
don't
doing
think
it well.
so. I think that they suck at it and they're not doing it. I think the conservatives were able to do it. I guess you could argue maybe in the future, if their messaging gets strong enough, they can try to have a plan to break through. But yeah, I mean, I also agree that we should do that. But I think that comes from our messaging apparatus functioning properly. Yeah. But
Okay, so you don't see like the super online space as the right engagement for like the normie space.
Not necessarily. I just don't think any of them have done a great job at like breaking through.
Look at the,
depending on if you're
polling
yeah
on Hassan.
yeah what
right?
I was just
That's
gonna
a
bring
good
it up.
example.
Yeah, like so as much as it seems like he's being forced right now, and it seems like Hassan is everywhere. Like what wasn't it like 78% of people like hadn't even heard of him before, and it was like 7% approved and 14% disapproved. Like
15% disapproved.
Yeah. And like like 2/3 or 3/4 of Dems had never even heard of Hassan before. So it's like the idea that he's so much more popular than he actually is just because we're in this media space so much.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of stress this point. Like, he had the wind at his back. Every opportunity, every door that he wanted was open to him. He had constant puff pieces in major outlets and magazines that normies read. He's been on CNN. He's been on Pod Save America and all these other like
exclusive ownership of Twitch, basically.
All these people kissing his ass and pushing him up. 7% favorability. 7%. It's amazing how badly they have failed. They have failed on every metric to push this.
But isn't the more interesting part of that statistic that he's unknown?
No, I think that's what I was saying before. I said I think it feels like it feels like he's everywhere, but he's really not. It's just because of where we exist online. That's why I was asking who you watched, because I think that he's just like a very big person in online spaces that do politics, but outside of that, I think not much.
Okay. Anything else, distant friend?
No, sounds good.
Well, thanks for calling in.
Later.
Well, Destiny, thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking your time to talk with Sid and have a more friendly conversation than we normally do here. But is there anything that you'd like to say to my audience before we send you on your merry?
No, I love you. Stay safe. Be careful. Have fun. Yeah, be careful, buddy.
I'll try. I'll see you later. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.